Oh my god. Okay.
Oh, there they
that's a good
go.
idea.
There, that's it.
Hello.
That's
Hello.
It's happened. Okay, now let me read this nonsense. I don't know where my glasses went. I'm blind as a bat. Yeah, look, Sean's not in this message list at all.
Because you can't read.
What do you mean I can't read?
You can't read.
Sean's name is neither Greenzerg, Greg Hansen, or Fayama.
Oh, I actually told him to show up. I think he's making coffee or he forgot about it.
He's literally not in this message list at all. He's not here. You can't tell me to go read something that doesn't exist. You're a mad woman.
He owes me 5 cents because I reminded him to show up.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I believe you.
Mm-hmm.
So, how's life? How's the chit chat?
Life is good. It's Mother's Day here, so I made some banana bread for me mum.
Good, good.
And had lunch with her, which was nice. Yeah, and it's been really, really warm today. And very windy, but nice otherwise.
Guys, minus the bread, that's basically the same shit that's going on over here. Yeah. Mother's Day, it's hot, it's windy. Yeah, well done. You nailed it.
I think you guys invented Mother's Day, didn't you? Isn't that an American thing?
I doubt it.
Really?
Mother's Day shouldn't be that new.
Mother's Day. Do we trust Wikipedia on this one? Modern holiday began in the United States at the initiative of Anna Jarvis in the early 20th century.
Well, well, well. Look who knows her Mother's Day history.
Yeah, look at me, knowing about all the important things. Oh my god, why is Greg not coming? You know, if Greg would be coming, then you could fetch some coffee and we could have some proper conversation here and wouldn't have to talk about artificial holidays. But
we now have to figure out when Father's Day started getting celebrated. Was that also from Anna Jarvis, or was one of them before the other?
I don't think so. I think Father's Day was after, actually. Because they were jealous, so... Right?
It has been celebrated since the Middle Ages.
Dodd. Oh, God. Well, here it says 1910. I guess every day is Father's Day if you're part of the patriarchy, right? So... there you go. That lost you 50 viewers. Don't worry about it.
Oh, they can go. Those ones we don't mind losing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh god, I'm gonna ping him.
Ping him. Don't be stuck in here alone with me. It's a nightmare from which no one will wake.
Oh my god, he's not stuck in some waiting queue again where it's like your meeting is about to start at 7:30 or something like we had last time and then suddenly 4 people popped up.
You scared off Nick and you scared off Greg, and so it's just...
No,
thank God, Greg's here.
What are you talking about?
God.
Greg,
hey, Greg.
Thank the sun.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize.
Did you have a shower?
I have never been so rejected as 5 minutes with Faye and me in Chit Chat alone. It's just been like, where's Greg? Where's anybody else? Please, somebody show up.
I'm so sorry.
Listen, if this was supposed to be a solo session, I need that on the calendar first. Okay, I don't like unprepared, quality.
I'm so sorry.
Time that needs to be scheduled.
I flipped away from Discord because I was waiting for you to wake up or tell us that you'd been killed by your cat or something.
Right.
I got a text that said, hey, one of the best songs for a karaoke is apparently Adele's Rolling in the Deep. And I said, bullshit. That is a very hard song. And so I spent 6 minutes describing to somebody why Adele's Rolling in the Deep is very hard.
That sounds very hard. Okay, but okay.
The two things are not related. It can be a great karaoke song and terrible.
No. Okay, all right. So it can't be a great karaoke song because unless you are a very good singer, the punch of the chorus will always be missing, right? So the highest
not
note
if you're drunk, my friend.
Karaoke is supposed to be bad, right? Like it's supposed to be bad, no?
There's a level of bad that it's supposed to be, right?
Okay.
Like you are expected to not be a professional singer, right? But like when you try to hit certain notes, they need to sound like the song, right? And Adele is incredibly talented because the highest note in that song is the high C. That's like one step above middle C. And it's a transitionary note between most, especially women's, but most people's register between a more chesty note and like the like upper kind of heady note. And when it transitions, it can sound really pitchy and high and shrill. And she hits it with like full body, and it's like a very warm note. It's where the like punch of the emotion of the song, right? When you had it all and you had it inside of your hands, right? Like that's where the like depth and emotion of the song comes from. And so not hitting that note well, like not only is like bad singing in a big air quotes, but like it also makes the song sound horrible, right? It makes it sound really bad. So it's a very tough song to do right by in karaoke.
I get it. Have you seen 500 Days of Summer, Greg?
I did once upon a time, and I don't remember anything.
Because there's a really nice karaoke scene in there.
Yeah.
He sings karaoke very well. Yes, it's a really good scene. Yeah.
I don't remember much about that movie. I was told that I must watch 500 Days of Summer with a friend of mine, and the ticket was bought for me, and I was dragged to it, and I saw it, and I immediately like forgot all of it.
Well, it's a good movie. I think it's a good movie. I can't remember too much about it. I remember the story and I remember what the essence is. And I remember loving his face. I think he's a professional texter for greeting cards, I think. Like he texts cards or something. Like, happy birthday, mom, love you forever or some shit like that. And he has this very depressed face at some point and he writes the like worst cards ever. It's just so funny. I love that. I love that very much. It's great. There's always someone who has to write those weird things you see somewhere. What a job that is.
I wouldn't even be able to imagine having to come up with those. I just assumed like some AI computer must have done it. Like, what a job.
I mean, out there, it's actually somebody's job to name things. Can you imagine that? Why are these people not out there, being dungeon masters in D&D? I wonder. It should be.
That's true. Yeah. If your job is naming things, make a list and send it to me, please. Like I need it.
Maybe you can get like a Patreon or GoFundMe or something, which is like, you can pay someone to come up with names for you.
Absolutely. The most recent names that I've come up with have been horrible. I had the Dragonborn adventurer Draco.
That's a great name.
That's a terrible name. Amazing. And then I rolled a dwarf name off of the list of names I had put together some like a year back or something, and it came up Stone's Throw, which had to be the worst day of my like naming career when I put that together. Yep. But now that exists because I wasn't like smart enough to just move on to a different name off the list. I rolled it and that's what was used.
Is it the first or the last name?
That was just the name of the adventure.
That's all he goes by. Okay, nice.
Yeah. Oh, it was rough.
We're in trouble. I think Sean abandoned us.
Did Sean abandon us?
Yes, okay. I reminded him and then he forgot about it. Hot diggity.
It's okay. Nick can jump in at some point. We'll bully him.
I think he's hurt because it was only our names on the schedule. And he was like, oh, fuck, man.
Right, because he said he couldn't make it, so his name didn't get put on the schedule, so now his butt hurt. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't Yeah, I mean, okay. Initially, you didn't say anything because it was just us replying, which is the only reason why we ended up on the schedule.
Right, right.
Because people are shit at replying. Oh, God.
I feel attacked. I am also shit at replying. I'm sorry to everyone I don't reply to timely.
The one time I'm like, oh, guys, remember we have a session tomorrow. It's like, yeah, this has been scheduled. I'm like, okay, I get it.
The one time we can go through this every week, practically.
I'm the only one checking in ever. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Check in. I just usually do it late, and then I don't think about responding. It's like I just like hit the Discord really quick before like heading towards bed, and I'm like, all right, I see things, and then I lay down and I forget about them until I check in again a day later. I see things. So I have to ask, what is your deal with hemoglobin, and why do you hate it? I literally went through like old research papers trying to find like having a lack of it.
No, you shouldn't have. We were just joking around with some people somewhere, and someone said something about like hemoglobin and what is it, and we talked about hemoglobin for a little while. And then I said, "Hey guys, don't you realize that if you just move the L in hemoglobin, you get hemogoblin?" And it really tickled me, so I left some like stupid messages for you guys about hemogoblins and talking about them.
I didn't realize it was a pun. I just thought you transposed two letters, and so I was laughing. What an interesting thing Neal wants to talk about during chit chat. Let me educate myself on this like protein.
I just feel like
fun.
You really need to stress how many people would love to have a chit chat with Neal sometime, right? And they don't realize that when you ask Neal, so Neal, have you prepared any topics? He's gonna say shit like, well, we can talk about hemogoblins, right?
Well, to be fair, this has always been my like topic thing. Like since its inception, it has leaned on Greg bringing random BS topics in.
But I stand by the hemogoblins. Like we can make this a real topic. Yeah. So the initial idea was that if you ever like are in one of those, we're going inside the monster's body, or like we're getting injected and going into their bloodstream, then you would fight the hemogoblins, and there'd just be a bunch of goblins guarding the creature's immune system.
That's so funny because in anime chat, we've been recently talking about Osmosis Jones, and now I kind of want to play Osmosis Jones fighting the hemogoblins.
I have no idea what Osmosis Jones is.
Oh, Greg, school this girl. School this girl.
School this girl, okay.
Yes, Osmosis I need to wear a t-shirt next week. Please educate me first.
Oh, no. Please don't.
The Tyrannosaurus.
that would hurt me on like some kind of metaphysical level.
So I'm all ears.
Osmosis Jones is an animated movie from like the early to mid 2000s, right? Starring Chris Rock as a white blood cell policeman who's a loose cannon and has, caused a lot of problems with his lack of quality police work inside the body of Bill Murray. And he teams up with a cold pill that Bill Murray takes, known as Drix, to fight off and investigate a new disease that has entered Bill Murray's body through like a bad egg sandwich, I think, that he got from a truck stop. And this evil disease is trying to kill Bill Murray, and the Ozzy and Drix have to like investigate it, figure out who it is, and stop it. And it's like kind of a bad movie, but it's also kind of the best movie ever. It was really fun.
You can't remember the plot of 500 Days of Summer, but you do remember where in that very specific movie he bought that bad egg sandwich.
Hey, I got priorities, okay?
Real estate in the brain is limited. It needs to be prioritized with the important things in life.
Well, here's the thing. I chose on my own to watch Osmosis Jones, and I was dragged to 500 Days of Summer. And
oh my God. I feel really intrigued to Google that movie, but on the other hand, I feel like that's a time in my life I'll never get back. You know, if I start here, that sounds like
it was
life
all right.
choice.
It was good enough that it spawned a straight to like Disney Channel cartoon spin-off show.
Oh my god, are you kidding?
Yeah, the cartoon show I think was called Ozzy and Drix.
Does that make Chris Rock a Disney princess?
And I think no, because they switched out Chris Rock's voice. I think.
Oh,
I think it was
Yeah,
a
makes
good
sense.
voice actor though. Hold on, I have to look this up.
yeah, but that
It
makes
was
sense.
a really good voice actor that did Ozzy.
Kid Rock as Kidney Rock? Oh my god, you're gonna be kidding me.
It was Phil Lamar.
Jesus.
Phil Lamar did Ozzy's voice.
I know that name, but I
Yeah,
can't
Phil Lamar's
place it.
the best.
Okay. Nice.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that we are now just Googling an old cartoon from ages ago.
No, I've never actually
good, though.
seen Osmosis Jones. I knew of it, but after your description of it, it has
He's
definitely
gonna
going.
watch that.
Oh my
he
God.
definitely needs to
Definitely
watch
gotta
it.
watch
This is what I'm doing
that.
today.
Like,
Yeah.
Before everything I ever recommended that actually has any substance whatsoever, Neal's got to go and watch this movie.
Okay, I have seen the things that you have recommended. At least two of them. There was the people on the moon.
We did watch the Octopus Teacher, which I only recommended based off DJ Wheat liking it on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it was a total success, by the way.
Yes, My Octopus Teacher, Bridgerton, and the Nazis on the moon, which I can't remember.
First of all, Bridgerton I did not recommend. I was just looking for someone to watch it with because I don't recommend movies I haven't watched yet, clearly. And the Nazis on the moon, I'm not sure you can call that a recommendation. That was more what's the silliest shit you've ever seen. So,
It's,
you know.
Anyway,
if you don't know Phil Lamar, you should watch Samurai Jack, and yes, make that a priority because Samurai Jack is the best thing.
Right.
oh look, it's a Sean.
Is he coming? Are we getting him? Oh, lordy, lordy. He made it. God bless. Oh, it's Jesus. Look at him. In the light. Whoa. That's a lot of light, Sean. Not gonna lie.
You're
We can't
muted
hear
somehow.
you. You're muted.
Comes to the territory.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Heaven? Yeah, okay, got it.
So, Sean, what are your thoughts on hemoglobin and/or Osmosis Jones?
I know and have no
Another
opinion.
man of culture. I knew I could believe in you, Sean. At least one person with reason around here. Oh my god. Woo.
Did I just get called uncultured for my knowledge of
Never.
old cartoons?
Of old egg sandwiches? Never, Greg.
All right, guys,
Hey,
I found it.
It's technically a Bill Murray movie, okay?
Okay. Sure.
Here you go. Here are your hemogoblins. I found them. They are
my
real
goodness.
creatures.
Oh my goodness.
This
I
one
think
is maybe the best.
That as well, so they know what we're talking about. Lovely. It looks like it ate a giant Fruit Loop, Neal.
Distended with the Cheerio.
It's also holding the mace wrong.
It's dancing with the Morning Star on a stick, you know? It's not attacking with it. He's having a good time.
It's actually a weed whacker, and it's just kind of.
Oh my god.
right
I
now.
can't. Okay, apparently hemogoblins are an entire thing for people with dyslexia. Very nice.
Nice.
Great.
I legitimately didn't realize that you were making a pun, and I thought
There
that
was
you
no
just transposed letters.
Yeah, there were no context clues to make you know that I was making a pun. I was just...
What?
Oh, that last one is gross.
That is terrible.
Yeah, I don't
That
like
is
that last
terrible.
one. It makes me uncomfortable.
Why
Yeah.
is his right hand bigger than his left one?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh god. Oh no.
Meet Icarus, Type O, and current proud holder of the Blood Amulet. It grants them twice the blood of your average goblin, and let me tell you, they're irresistible at the local ICU. Who would have thought goblins have a lot of accidents? That is the note on this post.
Oh dear. It is. The other goblins were like fine. This one is nightmare fuel.
Yeah.
Oof.
Here it is for Twitch
Did you
chat.
actually post it somewhere so people can see that stuff? Nice. Well done. Yeah.
I think it's better when
I
we
don't know.
leave chat out of it. We just laugh at our own little images.
To be
and
honest, though, I
jokes.
think that the text is kind of wrong because, in my opinion, goblins would have accidents all the time, right?
It's true.
I don't
Yeah.
think they would be among the 100 days since the last work accident sign people.
You're taking the very Warhammer approach.
Yeah.
It's just a fun way to run goblins, right? Like it's fun to, as a DM, have just like an incompetent group of like things to throw at your party.
Mm-hmm.
One of the favorite things I ever did was make all of their traps like backfire and not work.
Nice.
I actually played a goblin in 5e. I think it was a
nice.
goblin. Yeah. A goblin ranger sharpshooter in I forgot which is the module with all the jungle.
Chult.
Yes, well,
Schultz
the one
the
with
place,
Schultz.
yeah.
Yeah, the one with I keep forgetting what it is.
Isn't it like the
called, but in
Lost
that one-
Temple or something?
No.
I thought that was
No,
like
it's not Fandelva, it's the
death
Tomb
of
of-
deathness or whatever.
Yes, the death curse of what does anybody? Tomb of Annihilation. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that.
Tomb of Annihilation.
Nailed it.
That is
Yes,
it.
that
Yes. Yeah.
So I played it there. Lasted about 3 sessions, but the character was fun.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, well.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
boy.
my research before the stream did not give us anything valuable to talk about then, because I was ready to discuss like proteins and deficiencies.
Oh my god, no, not deficiencies.
Well, what's your blood type, Greg?
My blood type, I don't remember.
I'm in the same boat. I like look up my blood type again like every year or two, and then I immediately forget it.
Mhm.
Like every single time. I'm like,
I'm
man, I
one
should
of
really keep
the
this-
boring blood types. I'm like an A or a B. I don't have one of the fun ones. I'm not like an AB
I
or
thought
an
the
O.
0 ones are the
Right.
boring.
Yeah.
No, the O's are cool.
Those are
Those-
cool.
Those are cool.
Yeah, no,
because
O's
they're-
are cool for everybody, except if you're an O yourself, then it's not cool.
Yeah,
Pretty sure that's how
exactly.
it works.
But
Right.
at least it's unique and interesting, and you will know, right?
Sure,
Mhm.
that's what
Yeah.
your mother tells you, but
I was gonna say,
otherwise it's not that
whoa.
cool.
Whoa.
I was gonna say I'd love to be like AB positive, but I'm pretty sure I'm just like B or something.
Yeah. I think I'm I can't remember if it's positive or negative, but you know, you look at the blood type once, you remember it for like 6 months, and then it's gone for all
Yeah.
time.
I honestly, the place I remember it, I haven't ever really like looked it up on the like birth certificate or wherever, the like
Mhm.
medical documents that come with you. But like when I was in school, they still let you prick your finger and do the blood test, right? So like that's where I remember getting my blood type.
Well, I think if it would be really rare, then you would know because it would put you in danger, right? So
That's what I mean, right? I'm one of the
Mhm.
boring ones.
Yeah.
Much like everything in my life, I am the boring one.
Well.
Somehow I find that a little hard to believe.
You don't think I'm the boring one?
Mm-mm. But I
I
did
find
find
it very
a
easy to believe that we're all incredibly boring people.
I did
I
find
wouldn't
a
ever include anyone else in my denigrations. Just me.
I mean, look at Neal's cup. Neal, hold that in the camera for the.
Oh,
for
this
the
is my
glass.
wife's cup. Yeah.
Look, of course it's your wife's cup. All the interesting cups are from Lauren or gifted by her. This is adorable. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. She's had this cup since I've known her, I think. Yeah.
Aw, don't drop it.
Why would I drop it? Jesus.
Just say it. Keep
Just
it
assuming
simple.
I'm
Intentionally,
incompetent.
just don't create a comedy of errors right now, Neal.
Mhm.
So here's
Wow.
a Hemogoblin stat block. If anyone would like
Oh
to
my
take a
God.
look at it.
We have not moved on from this. Okay, let's
Why
have a
would
look.
we?
Oh,
I told you that's what we're here to talk about today. They have a
Okay.
blood drain attack, +5 to hit, reach 5 feet, deals d4 +3 piercing damage, and the Hemogoblin attaches to the target. While attached, the Hemogoblin doesn't attack. Instead, at the start of each of its turns, the target just loses d4 +3 HP due to blood loss. So it's one of the mosquito people, but as a goblin. It's literally the exact same stat block, I think.
I think, yeah, this is looking very Sturgy.
Yeah, maybe not such a high dex, but like the blood drain action's the exact same.
I'm pretty sure Sturges get pack tactics too.
Oh my god. They just took a Sturge and called it a
They should.
Hemogoblin. Forget this stat block.
hey, reskinning is valid. Do not. No.
No, it
Do
is, it
not
is.
shame the reskin.
And they included acrobatics, stealth, and perception, which I don't think the Sturge has. I'm pretty sure Sturges don't have +5 acrobatics or +5 stealth.
One
Yeah.
of the best ways to create new monsters is to think about a monster that does similar things to what you want, and then take that stat block and make small changes to like flavor it. That is legit.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I do is I take two monsters and I just mush them together. I'm just like, oh, we need a Medusa with a breath weapon. Let me find a breath weapon monster and a Medusa, and let's just mush these like traits and features together.
Mhm.
Sturges actually have much worse stats than this, Neal.
Yeah. But the combat actions are identical. I think Sturges
Good
only have like
job.
2d6
A
HP.
plus to whoever made that stat block. That's what I'm saying. Don't listen to
They have
curmudgeonly
1d4.
Neal over there.
Oh wow. They only have d4 HP for a Sturge?
Yeah, they have 2
Jesus.
HP, 1d4.
Piece of shit.
Well,
monsters.
usually you just put 100 of them in one room, right? And don't worry about it. Just make a swarm out of them.
Yeah. I do like the artwork of these goblins, like climbing down a hillside with no eyes. They're pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah. I dig it.
Faye's unimpressed.
Right. It's the same person who was like, please let Greg show up quickly. I can't stand
Yep.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Indeed.
what can I say? I'm not an expert on
She's like, I lost all faith in Greg. He wanted to talk about Adele and then Osmosis Jones.
Yeah,
Oh dear.
I mean, woof.
Oof.
Well,
can I
I'm
say?
sorry. Let us bring it around to something more tolerable for you. I wouldn't.
Okay. Well, now I'm actually worried, but sure. Now I'm wondering. Oh boy, oh boy.
Well, we usually talk Dungeons and Dragons in some way,
Mhm.
and I have, I don't know, a new campaign, which is quite fun for me. And I have an interesting thought about travel. I'm not going to change anything that I do, but like, I want to know what you guys think about a travel system that is very, very, very involved. This is the goal, and then tell me, I guess, thoughts, and we can drill into it as you want. But I've found this to be both a boon and a like negative. The goal of the travel system is such that it is engaged with as like a main core part of the game. So getting from place to place is not something that we abstract over and say, hey, you get there. There are roles involved to get lost, and the tracking of gear and equipment and food is very important. And there are many opportunities for combats and encounters and discoveries along the way. And it makes it a very like slow pace to the game. It's one of the like drawbacks that I see. And it makes for kind of a pretty variable experience, because if you roll all of the available encounters, you are going to be fighting or resolving obstacles a lot. And if you don't, you kind of get where you're going pretty quickly. What do you feel about having traveling from place to place be a very involved part of the game?
If it's fun, I'm in. If it's tedious, fuck it.
Where do you draw the line between tedious and fun?
That's sort of, it's hard to make that judgment without being in the mechanics
that's what's
and in the moment.
Interesting about it, though, and what makes it worthy of discussion, I think, is trying to find...
You'd have to have all the rolls and all the checks and all the mechanization of it still feel meaningful and fruitful, and like there's somewhere to go with it. If it's just like, we're going to need to make a total of, pass 5 out of 10 skill checks in order to get here, and we're going to give like a little bit of fluff on why each of these skill checks is necessary, but at the end of the day we're all just spamming skill checks to get where we need to go. That feels kind of boring and lame. So it would need to be like you have some mechanization of this thing, and then whatever roll gets made resolves into an interesting or meaningful encounter or situation or option, and then as you go on to your next check, whatever comes of that would also have to then present itself with something interesting or meaningful. You'd want the feeling that however your check went, the situation would resolve differently. So you miss your first survival check or something, and you guys end up having to like hunt for food, and so you don't make any distance, or you pass it well, and so you find a river with a little raft on it and allows you to like skip an extra 5 miles that day or something. There'd have to be like clear rewards or penalties that still provide like fun things to do. Does that make sense?
That is kind of the general goal, right? Is to create the play from place to place that is meaningful and interesting, right? The way that I see that is less, let's roll a bunch of skill checks, and more of a like, let's make decisions that matter, right? How fast do we go? How much can we carry? Do we stop and turn around?
I find it hard to make those things fun. Like the mechanization of travel is usually frustrating for me. So how did you make it fun for your players?
I don't know. I don't know if they're having fun or not. The way I see it is that we are just going to accept that it's a pillar of play, and it is going to be something that I'm going to make sure it is engaged with. So the way I run it is that there is a set distance between place to place that I see and they don't. And they generally call out the direction that they would like to go. And then we will roll a skill check based on whatever navigating principle they would like. And I determine whether or not that costs them time based on the difficulty of the terrain. So if you're going through a swamp, terrain's very difficult. So navigating that swamp is going to be harder. If you're going through a plain, it's much less hard, right? Simple things. They pass or fail that. I'm going to check 1 or more hexes off, and we continue. Then we roll for potential encounters throughout the day. Every time we roll for an encounter, they are going to interact with it. An encounter is an obstacle in their path. And I have created an encounter table that includes everything from an ambush and a fight to treasure carrying things to people resting, people hurt. It's a wide range of encounters that are not necessarily supposed to be combative on their face, but are obstacles to progressing. And they will also roll every day for discovering things that are along the path. And we've talked about discoveries, I think. No, I guess Sean and I talked about it. You and I haven't. Where the discovery is much like the thing you find in an RPG, right? And when you're crossing a world in an RPG, you're like, if you're playing Dragon Quest, you're going to find a little corner of the world that has a chest in it, maybe is guarded by some monsters, maybe it's a cool set piece of like lore that's set up there, or maybe it's just a particularly like dangerous encounter. But you're going to find something optional that you can choose to interact with that may give you a reward or a piece of lore or an interesting and fun encounter or a puzzle. And you can choose to either engage with it or continue on with what you're doing. And so I've tried to put a bunch. I tried to put a bunch of those things in it. And so the fun of play is that like we aren't going to just go from here to there and the adventure starts once we get there. It's that on your way from here to there is a lot of adventure along the way. It is potentially dangerous, potentially very rewarding, and it's exhausting, right? It takes we are going to track all of your time and your resources, and if you run out of resources, like, you're in trouble.
Well, the resource tracking, I've had struggling sessions with that. If you guys recall, I don't know, the middle half of Frofro, or the middle third of Frofro, there were some struggles with mechanization of packing all your shit, which we just ended up resolving by portable hole. How do you resolve the 5 minute, 2 hours of talking about what you bring?
I don't resolve it because that is a part of the play that I desire, I suppose. And you choosing meaningfully whether or not you can carry what you want to get where you want to go is a player choice that I think matters. And having that run out is an important consequence of play. I have not had anyone spend longer than Faye and Sean in town, and they largely
It was
were
15 minutes, bitch.
It was like 15 minutes. Don't even start with me.
So it wasn't that long, according to them.
What do you mean according to them? I went back to the vault and timed it because you said we spent an hour in town, and I knew you were gravely mistaken. It was 15 minutes.
So I've had no one spend longer than 15 minutes in town.
There you go.
And what I'm trying to get at is most of it has not been buying stuff and tracking stuff, because largely all I care about mechanically is the weight of it. Are you encumbered and can you carry it? And I just ignore the volume of it and how you're getting it there, right? So the problem I had with Frofro was the lack of meaningfulness of bringing anything along. Whether we carried things on the sled or not, it never mattered. And going from place to place largely never mattered. Frofro was a point of interest map almost of the campaign, right? And I guess that's what I'm doing as well, but I guess the point of what I'm doing is to go from point of interest to point of interest, right? That's the design of it. And I don't know. I guess this is bogging down in very like which mechanics are best. And I guess what I was trying to get at is is that an interesting pillar of play to people? Because the other side of that, like very drill it down. There's three ways I think to handle travel. There's drill down, make a mechanized system and make it a big part of the way you play because you find it interesting or you want it to be interesting. There's the other good option, which is to ignore that travel exists and kind of say, you travel from here to there, montage, and you're there, and now your adventure continues, right? And then there's the bad way to do it, where people think, yes, we must have something interesting happen. We're going to half montage, and then I'm going to like throw some random bullshit at the party every now and then like bog down and slow the game down until we get to the next adventure, right?
Well, unless you're doing something like West Marches or an area that is specifically based on exploration, if you're doing more of like a normal, ordinary campaign, I would say that you want to push on all of the levers a little bit of the time. So some adventures, some sections of the campaign, travel should be pretty skippable. Some sections should have like some random crap going on, and some sections should probably end up being kind of detailed. And then you should, try to push on all of the like adventure storylines in different ways at different times for, generalized D&D playing. But Fro style or West Marches style, the travel becomes the objective almost, and then you just got to spend a lot of time focusing on these things.
I guess I don't care. Let's not talk about that. But, sure.
All
Okay.
right.
I just find it interesting because I've implemented that system for a while now, and I don't know how successful it's been, but I've been enjoying it, and so it will continue.
Nice.
Sean, do you have a great opinion on the matter?
Greg and I talked about this quite a bit when I jumped into a stream last Friday. We talked about travel mechanics, so I don't really want to re-litigate our discussion.
Well, you can just give like a 2-minute, or 2-sentence rundown, so I know what your opinion is.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's fine. It wasn't really like a criticism of his system. We just kind of talked about travel mechanics in general and how it's hard to make them engaging, not because because people try to make travel mechanics that are like super detailed and realistic and follow all these legitimate concerns you might run into on the road, but they're not fun gameplay wise because people don't focus on the thing that makes games fun to play, which is making interesting decisions.
Right.
And we talked about that, just what his system does well and things like that.
I guess that's what I was going for, is interesting decisions while traveling, and I think that's a thing that you can either value in play and say, I want that and I like it, or you can say, that doesn't make the game better for me, and so it's better to just skip it entirely.
I think the example I gave was that gulch that we ran into in the session that we played, where there was it was clearly flagged as dangerous because there were like vultures all along it, like peering down into it, but then there was also something glittering out back from it, so it's like, oh, that could be like gold or something. And we opted not to go there. And the idea that you would have a place that promises some sort of like reward for exploration, but also brings about a danger to the point where people would consider whether or not they want to do it, that's the kind of difficult decision that makes like exploration feel like exploration. Because if you can just go everywhere and like check off every room in the dungeon, you're just sweeping the dungeon. That's not exploration. But that was, yeah. I've mostly had positive things to say about what Greg's been running.
Cool.
I have very strong opinions about these travel mechanics. Okay, I'm pulling myself together. So, I absolutely loved the random encounters that Greg put on the table for our sessions. I think they were great and they're good fun. And I generally think Greg is really good at making encounters. Like, they are fun most of the time. Like, really well done. I think that a West Marches style game hinges strongly on the objective that you have, right? So if I say my objective is to kill the troll in the hills, if I don't get to see the troll in the hills, that's going to be kind of frustrating, because that is the goal I've set myself to achieve in a single session. Like, if I play a West Marches style game as Faye the player, I'm not saying everybody does it that way, I think chances that my character is going to die, probably solid 80%, right? I at least want to make it to the objective and interact with it. right? That's what I want to do. Like if I go down fighting, at least I want to go and die where the troll is and not on my way there, right? So in general, that's my, like, I at least want to get a glimpse of the objective. I think encounters along the way make it a lot of fun, and I think it makes it very interesting. I just think that the exploration aspect should not overweigh my objective. I think it needs to be balanced in a way where you enjoy like exploring the way, but where you still make it to your end goal. Whether you achieve that or not is an entirely different thing, right? But you need to make it there in time enough to have enough time to interact with it and try to figure it out without it being frustrating because, you know, oh shit, we've already spent like 3 hours in the wilderness, right? And we've just made it there too late. Which doesn't mean you didn't enjoy the wilderness part. It just means that you don't have enough time to figure out the objective that you set as your goal for this session when you only might have one session to play, because we're talking about, you know, players are swapping. It's not like you get another chance at this next week. Like next week might just be somebody entirely different, right? So I think that in general, like either you have random encounters, and then these encounters need to be random in a way where it's balanced enough that there's not so many that you can't make it to the exploration of your objective, or the characters are not the encounters are not random, but it's like it's one encounter per day, but they're still balanced in a way where you have enough time, and it's not like it's at least one fighting encounter an hour, so you might run out of time for the like objective in the end, if that makes sense.
Yes, that is all good. The thrust of my original question, which I suppose I am poorly spoken, is that I have attempted to create a system where the journey to where you're going is as much of a part of play and as interesting a part of play as where you are going once you get there. So what I am hoping to have created, or am trying to, is a system where the journey is as least as much fun, if not more fun and more engaging than the destination once you arrive. And so I guess the thrust of my question is, what do you think of a game based around the journey from place to place as opposed to the destination?
If you can set your expectations that way, I think it's fine, but you really got to set those expectations. You wouldn't want players to be in a position where they are focused on the destination and aren't caring about the journey, as is often the thing with humans as a whole.
I mean, that also sounds to me more like an exploration campaign than a very go there, kill the troll campaign, right? To me, that sounds like go and explore the old keep and see what you find there, right? Because then you're like, okay, I'm interested in what is there, and I'm also interested in what is on the way, right? Because then it's exploration. But if you're like, I want to kill the troll in the old keep, right? Then you're more focused on that and not on exploration in general, right? It's not an exploration campaign in theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I hear West Marches and you put up a job board, which is like kill, loot, you know, whatever, then to me it's about the job that you're accepting and it's not about the journey there, right?
Put up the job board to give new players something to do so that they didn't feel like I don't know what to do. My hope is that the job board largely gets ignored by more experienced players and people who have gone into the wilds a few times in favor of, I am interested in X, Y, or Z and want to go find out more about it. And then somebody new can be like, well, I have no idea what to do. Oh, I guess there's some bandits. Let's kill some bandits, or let's find some buried treasure, right? And so that's an introductory point, right? As the game evolves, I would expect that reliance on job boards goes down.
How many sessions have you played until now?
Good question. 6, 7, something like that. All right. Well, I think that this has been talked to death, unless anyone has very interesting things to say about it.
No.
All right, I'm gonna roll on my list of random topics to talk about them. How do you feel about discussing character concepts? Ooh, player character concepts.
Oh, like for when lag starts on again? You want to talk about that? About
Well, no, I mean, we could talk about lag if you wanted
It's
to.
a joke.
Discussing
It's actually-
character
it's a joke.
concepts? Do you mean like prior to creation?
Okay, yes. So, all right, I have rolled again. What do we think about character concepts of priests? Let's talk about
Okay.
I've got something for this.
Okay.
I like that. Let's go. What are we talking about exactly? I don't know what character concept for priest is.
All right, so I think that there are a lot of ways to potentially play a priest character. I think that priests are a very interesting one because you can have a, excuse me, you can have a very pious priest, right? That is like of an order, of a faith, right? And it's kind of this like very classical character, but I am very interested in like the antithesis of that as character concept. Like, what if you're the like priest that is spiritual and not particularly invested in a worldly order or a like tradition or godliness. You're just the shepherd of your town's village, right? And you are, you know, the person that is invested in their well-being, and you've educated yourself, right? And there's maybe some spiritualness to you as a character. Like that priest, I think, as a generalist of some kind, would be an incredibly fun concept to play around with, right? And like the motivations of the like kind of shepherd of this village's people is a very different kind of adventurer, I think, than the like high priest of the order of, you know, Sartor and the great city of Babylon. And I think that I would be very interested in seeing that kind of I don't know, humanist approach to a class that often is very detached from people.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I would love to see some more like down to earth local clerics running around and doing things, or local priests running around and doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a character backstory worked up for just such a character should the need ever arise. Yeah. I've got this nice long little story about this priest who is overseeing a town, ends up having like an affair with one of the people there, which goes poorly and leads to, ends up through his own lack of taking responsibility for this, ends up with people in the town dying. And then this is all like a prelude. So the character would be a priest who used to be like the local townie priest, but then is now driven from his home and now has no place left to go to because he's not welcome back in his home anymore. And so now he's like wandering around trying to atone for his misdeeds, which are sort of, more of lies of omission and trying to maintain the status quo and not like deal with the hard issues. But I guess that's all I have to say on it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of trying to make the priests more interesting and less like, I speak for my God, I am the all, everything, follow me, I know all the answers. I want more priests that are like, well, I'm just trying to do my best for people and now I'm lost, or now I'm over here and out of my element.
Have you ever seen Firefly, Neal?
I was watching Firefly last night.
I know.
I watched 3 episodes of Firefly last night.
Oh boy.
I know that Shepard is an actual priest and is like a godly person.
Yeah.
But if you stripped Shepard's godliness and left his character otherwise intact, I think that he would be a very interesting D&D character.
Why would you want to strip his godliness, though?
because I think you could leave it intact, I suppose, right? But it wouldn't fit the idea of the priest divorced from a like organized religion. Right?
Absolutely. 100% it does. Shepherd Book is about a man who turned to religion to atone for his misdeeds previously in life and like found his own path forward through his own former darkness. I think
And he wears his vestments and he preaches and he follows the strict conventions until he shoots a guy's kneecap, which was actually one of my favorite scenes.
Well, also the very first episode, he ends up like punching out a lawman to the face. Like his character's all about, I used to be evil, then I became good, and now I'm finding some like path through the middle ground that's confusing and difficult for me to manage. He's perhaps the most interesting of the characters.
That level of spirituality is capable of being expressed without the organized religion, and I think that would be a very interesting character to bring to a table.
I guess I just don't see very much organized religion coming out of Shepherd Book. You know, at one point he's like, do you mind if I say grace? And the captain's like, only if you say it aloud. And like, so he never says anything religious. He's just sort of like, remember, I'm a shepherd, but I'm good with guns and I can punch. And like, I'm wise and I'm sassy and I get along with the big dumb mercenary. I love him.
He's a lovable character. Are there any other concepts that you guys think are interesting, or should I just rattle off everything I've ever thought of?
I think I have a different priority on that front, because my big frustration with Dungeons and Dragons clerics has not been like their association with bigger religious orders. It's that Dungeons and Dragons has meaningless religions that don't matter. Like pantheons in D&D are kind of like that big umbrella approach of we have every kind of deity in here, and like they're all kind of cool. Some of them really suck, but we let them in anyways. And like nothing really has an ethos or a philosophy to it. And I'm not like blaming you here, Neal, because this is just how Dungeons and Dragons writes itself. This is how it tells you to build everything. And it creates something that doesn't feel important, right? It feels like I'm creating a character who is godly in like a very vague and meaningless sense, and that makes sense because that's how like the creators originally intended it. Like back when in original D&D, clerics didn't have gods. You were just like, oh yeah, you're a cleric. You worship like a god of some kind somewhere. Don't worry about that. Like there were no mechanics for making actual religions in original D&D, and it's something that it never really did a good job of, in my opinion. And I think like a few years back, like one of the pushes I had to try and do more like monotheistic religions in Dungeons and Dragons was to try and create religions that were more directed and had more of like a purpose and goal and like ethos and philosophy to them. And I'm less of like a monotheism guy now, but like I tried to create things that actually drive ways of living that will impact a player character is one of the things that I think is more interesting about what you can do with religious orders. And that's why I'm like less about cutting people off from their like affiliations to some kind of order, because that to me is just a druid, right? Like you're just talking about a druid at that point. I'd rather just like make religious orders in Dungeons and Dragons more interesting.
I like the idea of sects. When you talk about religious orders, if we're going to dive into like unorganized religion, I really like the idea of playing priests that are of some kind of opposed sect. Like if the god of life says, all life is sacred and we must guard everyone forever and ever and ever. And then there's this sect of life that's like, all life is sacred, and that's why we must end it at a certain age or like a certain point, right? Like no person should live beyond 100 because now it's you've this is the ordained time by the god of life. And then there's another sect that's like, life is kind of sacred, but what's really sacred? Living forever. Let's make undead. Undead life is the best life, right? And so like you could still worship the same god and then have these competing sects of the religion that are formally, I guess, in opposition, but kind of are working towards a similar end goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a fun character design too, just kind of being against the grain that way.
Mm-hmm. I also just think like organizations that maybe try to like pull in people besides clerics, like the church has control of the area and here's like the virtues they want everybody to live by, and here's why their shitty corrupt political organization fails at their own virtues. Like it's I get what you mean, but also like that idea of you have multiple like groups that worship the same deity but different interpretations of that deity, and they enter into bitter wars with each other over these small differences in their interpretation of the same thing. That
sounds very realistic.
That's how people work.
True.
I think
that's just what we do ourselves, Greg, every time we get into a discussion.
That's true, yeah. We have Seanism and Gregism, and they're largely going to the same point, but they're very bitter about how they get there. I don't know. I like to, so I'm trying to spin a lot of what you do into like character concepts, right? So like the organization being very front and center. I guess an opposing sect is a cool character concept. I guess how would you embody that concept as a character then? Like how would you turn your organizational structures and lives of people into like a character to play?
Well, I guess that's like you can, the reason I meant brought up the organization is the organization and the ideals that it teaches becomes like talking points for your character's behavior. Like to dip into RuneQuest, because that's all I fucking do nowadays. If you look at like the Orlanthi religion, like Orlanthi valued generosity and honesty and bravery. So like if you're in Orlanthi and people come to your stead, like a point of like pride would be, even if it's difficult for you to stretch your food supply, you should give people shelter if they come to your stead, because that's generosity. That's something that your religion values. Like those sorts of things that tell you how to behave in difficult situations is one of the things that I think should be like informed by your religion, and having that thrown into conflict by the fact that like what you want to do to be like a good Orlanthi is not necessarily what is easy to do with your art.
Aww.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I
don't understand what was inside the cup.
It's a dragon.
I saw one of those, but with a cat.
Oh, it's
and
a dragon.
Whose cup is that, Neal?
And a crate.
These are my cups that Lauren didn't get, and they're fucking cool. I searched for cool cups in my kitchen, and I came up with these.
Well, they are cool cups. I will have to admit that. Yeah, I like them both. Very cute.
They're good.
They're from Layla and Chris, the people who do the recaps. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just trying to show off my cups.
I think there's a general... How do you call that? So there are 2 points there, right? On the one hand, you want people to make their own choices in a greater religion. For example, you have Martha as the goddess of life, and you want a cleric of Martha to struggle with their decisions, for example, to kill somebody, right? And they have to make the choice whether, do I want to value the person's life, or do I need to kill that person for the greater good and save other people's lives, yada, yada. And you can create conflict through not having strict or not having rules how to behave, right? And the other way would be what Sean suggested, which is like you have a general codex you should adhere to that you know, and that might sometimes get you into trouble as a person because you might still have difficulties with sharing your food when you're starving, for example, right?
You know what that reminds me of is, what's the old games that have when you play as the avatar and you have to like extol all your virtues?
Oh, you're thinking of Ultima 4.
Ultima
4 specifically was the one you're thinking of, where it's like we need a person who represents these virtues, like these I think it was 7 virtues, and then there were 4 oh god, what were they had like the 7 virtues and the 4 they weren't called virtues, they were like values or something. But you had to like max out everything. You had to like be generous to people, and you also had to be like honest to people. And then that was the game. You just went around trying to be like the best person you could be, so you could become the avatar.
That would be a cool character concept, I guess, almost, right? Like instead of being out there to get other people on board or to fight monsters or whatever, like your adventure is to like hone your virtues and
and that would be
the most cheese possible or something.
Yeah, and that would be
cool.
in line with like polytheistic religions. Like a lot of ancient religions weren't proselytizing, right? Like that was big with like more monotheistic religions. But like one that doesn't proselytize and it's just about like how you live under it. Yeah, that's good shit.
I'm sorry, Faye. You reminded me of a video game, and I jumped.
No, it's fine. It was on topic. That's all good. I'm just thinking about what I like better. I think from most of the clerics that I've seen that I think are lacking or are not as interesting as other characters, I think one core of the problem is when their religion is the very core of their character. I think in general, that's actually a problem for the cleric because that makes them boring. Like, if your agenda is, I'm going to wait for my god to tell me what to do, and that is all your character is, I don't, like, personal opinion, okay? Let's calm down. Like, that's just me. I don't find that interesting. Like, if all your drive comes from praying in the morning and your god telling you what to do, that's not interesting, right? That's like a fighter walking up to the job board at every town they see. Like, that's not fun. That's not interesting. It's more interesting if your character has goals they want to achieve and they use their god to achieve those goals, right? Or they have to find a way to achieve the goals that is still like in line with what, with following their god, or that is opposing the god. And then they need to make justifications. Like, that is interesting. It's not interesting to be there and, I'm just doing this because my god wants me to do that, right? I think that's a core problem many clerics have.
So what kind of goals would you give clerics to make them more interesting?
Yeah. I mean, depends on the cleric, right? And it depends on what kind of cleric you want to play. I don't think there's like a general
I guess that's kind of the point of the discussion in my mind is
right.
Let's think up some ideas of ways that we could interestingly play clerics, like concepts that might be entertaining and fun. Then we could use them in the future, or maybe this gives ideas for people in chat to springboard off of.
Mm-hmm. My question then would be, if we're going down the approach of oh Jesus, I completely blanked on what I was saying. I had a point, and then I started to talk about it, and I like immediately forgot what I was going to bring up. So if we're going to talk about this, I think we should probably distinguish, like, one thing that I think Dungeons and Dragons really struggles with is the fact that, like, in ancient worlds, almost everybody's religious, right? Like, clerics are holy people of significance, but almost everybody worships the gods, right? Almost everybody has like things about the deities that they incorporate into their daily lives. So with that in mind, what distinguishes a cleric from a regular person? Like, what makes them different from the order? Because everybody wants to like follow this road of spiritual and personal enlightenment, right? That's like what the religion is there for. What makes a cleric different from your ordinary layman?
Divine powers. Magic.
But why do they get them? What got them divine powers? Like, was it part of their journey of enlightenment? Did they do it because they were so good at it?
I think that's how you get your different flavors of clerics. You get the one who was chosen, you get the one who chose this path, the one who stumbled on it, the one who never wanted to be here but somehow just like accidentally ended up here, the one who has been trying to like run away. The god's like, you need to be my cleric. You're like, no, I don't want to be your cleric. And has been like trying to avoid their duty their whole life, I think there are a lot of cool backstories that can get you here. The problem I find with clerics is that to be a character of a god, you really need to be steeped in a lot of lore and a lot of culture and a lot of like campaign setting specific information. A cleric is a very cultural character, and unless your player, or you if you are the player, is willing to like really dig into the society and the lore and the culture and the religion and come up with like rituals and stuff, it always feels a little flat to have this like divinely inspired person who's always like, so by the way, DM, how does my god feel about this one topic? Okay, cool, I'll riff on that. Like, I feel like a cleric really needs to know the shit and be like deeply ingrained in the culture, and spreading culture in game is like a slow, painful, laborious process that never really gets done right.
I think that that's a problem that's very unique to the world building that you employ.
Yeah.
Because you have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours meticulously detailing mundane aspects of your world so that there is a canonical answer for those things.
I mean, you forget all my world stuff. You could do this with just a campaign that was a campaign world that had been created out of nothing and still run into the same problem of like, I have a religion. What is the appropriate thing to do in this situation? Kind of how what Sean was talking about earlier is having answers to difficult problems.
Is an opportunity for the player to take authorship of the world and create, right?
In theory, that's a solution, but in practice, that's not a solution I see very often. You know,
I guess this is the response as a DM to that question. Hey, what does Martha feel about this abomination in front of me? And either you think this is a very, very important tenet of the religion and I must put my foot down, or you say, I don't know, player, what does Martha feel about this?
I don't feel like either of those are particularly useful responses, because I feel like a proper cleric is a spiritual guide and someone who can interpret the world for the player, for the rest of the party, and someone who can sort of ground the party in a sense of, ritual and society.
And letting
it just
them create their own explanations does not solve that problem. Because obviously every spiritual guidance in the world is the same, right? No one has ever had different thoughts of how to guide people and ground them.
The difference is, how often do you actually run into a situation where there's like where a cleric will do something cleric-y or like religious-y or culturally that is not necessarily that isn't like a core moment that's happening. You know, you never have a cleric walking down the road and sees like a beggar on the side of the street and then's like, hold on, this is an important article of our faith and our culture and our people. Let's do something with this beggar. It's always like, well, I need my healing spell from my god. Okay, I'm gonna like riff a little bit on this topic. I feel like a cleric needs to be like a deeply rooted character. Like, what am I trying to say? The strength of a fighter comes from their combat nature, their ability to like interact with the world physically. A wizard is like investigating magic. You can learn it in different ways. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you can dig into, and all of these things have a lot of opportunity to like riff on and reach out on your own. But with clerics, you're trying to like reinforce a culture, and if you don't know the culture, it's hard to reinforce it. And if you want to make up some culture, then you're often going to find like a mismatch between that and the way the rest of the world is. If one cleric is coming by being like, this is what the culture is like, but the rest of the world doesn't reflect the values that your cleric has been espousing, then it feels weird and it feels flat.
2 options there. One, you embrace that because it is very obvious to anyone who looks out into the world that there are very, very different interpretations from the spiritual leaders of our world about how the world works and what it's about, even inside their own religions. Or 2, you as the DM say, yes, player, that is how the world works. And now the cleric that they run into later reflects that. The players having authorship over the world is an important aspect of Dungeons and Dragons that is often overlooked by the tyranny of DMs. And they're like, no, this is my world. This is how it works. This is what it is. And like, that is an acceptable style of play, right? Like somebody like Neal who puts 2 billion hours online into a world and has a canonical response for what the weight of a single copper piece is in the 13th century Ming dynasty, right, that you've dug out of this old tomb, right, is like you are expecting a different kind of player, right? But most people don't do that. Hey, look, Sean has the coin.
I've got you.
Right, and like having the opportunity for your players to be a part of your living, breathing story and world is important, and the cleric offers a specific avenue for that approach. And I think one of the things that Sean was getting at earlier is that one of the failings of D&D is that the player is not incentivized to stop at the beggar you mentioned and interact with them, right? They are incentivized to ignore them and only worry about getting their healing spell.
I feel like clerics would be more fun if they were based on current real world religions that we could dig into, where you're like, okay, my cleric, he's a Catholic. And now when I play my cleric, I can draw on all of these traditions and rituals and notions and cultural concepts, rather than being like, my cleric is the cleric of Boing Boing, and Boing Boing is the god of war, and now we're out here, and I have to like make up some random god of war stuff that kind of fits in the situation, but like I'm just riffing off the top of my head, and so it's not that great. And now the whole party's laughing because we're clerics of Boing Boing, god of war, and we're gonna Boing Boing into battle, and it's just, it feels weird. It feels flat and shallow. I feel like the cultural concepts of clerics need to be a little bit more refined if they want to feel like really interesting and juicy, because you can sort of riff and let players do whatever they want, but it gets weird and you end up with like silly things that happen and they don't feel important. They don't feel like lived. They feel espoused and joked about and then moved on from. I feel like it's like, do clerics well, you really need to dig into some sort of like cultural norms, because that's the role that the cleric plays, is a spiritual and cultural leader who helps people navigate society and faith and interpersonal relationships. You know, it's a complicated role that is deeply seated in society, and it's hard to just kind of like wing that or to do it lightly without a lot of work involved. And that's why I feel like most clerics end up sucking.
I think I also disagree.
Yeah, I think that's a very shallow.
I'm highly confused because I feel like that's contradicting itself pretty hard with how you're playing your world.
Well, I'm deeply unsatisfied. What I'm saying is I'm deeply unsatisfied with clerics as a concept. Probably because my actions don't reflect my ideology, or the way that they end up working in my world don't reflect my concepts. And that's what I'm espousing here, is the difficulty of getting clerics to work well.
I think that if you wanted players to do that, then the best thing you could do is probably adopt Sean's stance on D&D religions and either throw out half of your half of your gods, or just ignore them for a while and take your big ones and say, this is what life in the world of Martha looks like. This is the virtues that Martha says you must have to be a good Marthan, and you must
Marthan?
Yes, a Marthan.
I love it.
A proper Marthan will always, have food on the table at, sunset for any that come to their home. And a good Marthan will always stop to give to those who are less fortunate or whatever, right? And like, these are things that are inherent to every Marthan that anyone meets throughout your world, and are observed and reinforced. And like, when you read about Martha, you don't read about the god of life and like what Martha did and the who her brothers and sisters are. You read about what the Marthan religion is about, right? And break that down. And then now you've given players a template to show them what your expectation of their play is.
Yeah, I think my solution was just going to be have fewer clerics as player characters because they're awkward and frustrating and they don't
This is true.
usually feel well done.
Human fighters only. Let's go.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Mhm.
Okay, hold up. So since I am, has anybody else played a Martha cleric in here? No? Okay.
You're the only Martian around.
The only cleric of Martha around. Okay, first of all, when I played my cleric of Martha in Neal's world, I had a pretty fixed codex for her in my mind. What it's like to being a cleric of Martha. I think that as a DM, in general, it would be good to give such a codex beforehand to your players. Whatever, make it the stone tablets of Martha, right? These are the 10 rules. This is what you shall abide, right? And then you can play after that. I think having, in general, a codex is very, very helpful, especially if you don't want to throw hooks to your players, right? If you want players to take the initiative and seek out beggars or people to feed or whatever, and you don't want to be like, oh, you come across a beggar, what do you do, right? But if you want this all to be on the player side, then such a codex makes it much, much easier for players to seek it out, because they know, okay, I should do these things, right? Maybe it's time to do one of the things of my codex, right? And they'll throw it in because they have something to take the initiative with. Whereas if you don't give them any hooks and they don't have a codex, then like they won't find it interesting to pursue things that doesn't seemingly matter to anybody else, right? Because the rest of the group is just going to roll their eyes while you go feed the beggar. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that even in Neal's pantheon, there's plenty of space for that. It's just that he doesn't like giving out these codexes. But if you make up your own codex that is like fitting enough, it can work fine. But it needs a lot of effort from the player side to make that work, right? To make the cleric work in Neal's world right now is a lot of effort you got to put into that shit.
So, to give you an idea of like, I don't think it takes that much work to give people like a thought as to what it looks like to be part of a religion. So like if we pull on, I like my Orlanth example just because it's well-written stuff. Like I could describe that whole like experience to somebody in like a handful of sentences where like the three general maxims are: nobody can make you do anything, violence is always an option, there is always another way. Those are like the three maxims there. He calls on his followers to follow or practice the virtues of courage, wisdom, generosity, justice, honor, and piety. And then if you are an initiate to his cult, you're probably strong in the air rune, so you should be tempestuous and emotional, probably violent as well. And if you are strong in the movement rune, you should be like quick to act, but also quick to recognize when you've screwed up by acting too quickly and fix your mistakes. Because what made him the king of the gods was not that he was like so wise that he never made mistakes. It was that unlike the other gods, he recognized when he made mistakes and fixed them. And that's all you really need to know for that cult. Like he's the king of your entire pantheon. He's like the chief god, and that's going to inform how everybody lives their lives a little bit. That's all you really need to know.
Yeah, I guess if you don't want to give out domains to gods and you just want them to be like entirely codex based, that's a thing you can do. But I think you can do both together if you want to, right? Yeah. Or you get rid of the greater gods at a whole and say, well, these are the 20 gods, these are their codexes, they're all equal, pick whatever you like.
The only reason I said to throw gods out is because I didn't think Neal wanted to make 40 distinct cultural like creations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you could do it, right? All you have to do to encourage that play is either allow players authorship to do it and embrace it, or give them guidance and say, these are the expectations of this god. And currently, the Pantheon does not do that.
Yeah.
So, clerics as non-clerics. I like priests as not clerics as well, in like complete and utter like counterpoint to Neal's view of clerics. I think one of the coolest things is that a priest could just be a pious adventurer.
Oh my God.
Not a... Huh?
Greg, you give me a brilliant idea. What if, right, you've got priests and clerics. Clerics cast the
Oh my
spells,
God.
priests are religious leaders. What if we just start having like fighters and wizards who are priests? So your class is
Absolutely.
wizard, your class is fighter, but like your character is like a priest, you know, you hang out at the temple, you do the things, but like you cast fireball instead of cure light wounds. You cast like, you know, 2 attacks
So
per
that's the
round
wizard.
instead of...
That's the wizard priest.
This is 100% what I was getting at, right?
Yes.
I think that a cleric could also just be a pious adventurer, but priest as a non-cleric is a really cool character concept as well, I think, right?
Oh, I love it.
I like the idea of the priest who is a monk or is a fighter or is a rogue, right? That is their class, but they are, you know, first and foremost a priest. They are religious. They're
The gods didn't give me cure light wounds, but they gave me these guns. Come on over here, buddy.
yes.
So
Right.
my
I think it'd be fun.
my only issue with this, like one of the things that comes up about this is why bother, right? Because the big thing about games is that incentives drive behaviors in gameplay, right? And I think it'd be easier, like this, I'm not saying this is the better way, but it'd be easier to drive this if you wanted to get rid of clerics and make anybody who worships a god have access to cleric spells. So fighters can cast cleric spells, wizards could even cast cleric spells if they worship their gods. But if you're going to go down the road of like, what if we have people who worship the gods but don't get magic for it? What drives them to do the worship? Because a warrior like worshiping Bellum, right? Like the idea of just your stock soldiers all getting together to say prayers to Bellum, even though they're not like religious leaders, makes a lot of sense. Of course, you would like worship the war god before you go to war.
Do you assume that every person that doesn't get clerical magic from the gods stops worshiping them?
No, but my point being, as players, people are
I
going
think
to focus
that
on things that give them
the
mechanical
concept here
benefits.
is just like for fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's a fun character concept to potentially add to a fighter rather than being the 14th mercenary that we've created, or, you know, general or ex-soldier or, you know, local folk hero.
But
What if you're an actual like Templar, right? You're a fighter, but you know, you are deeply involved in the cult of Bellum, and like that's just your, or even better, you're just, you know, you're a true believer in the ways of Martha, but like you're a fighter. That's your skill set. I think that would be a fun avenue of RP.
to me, that sounds very much like 5e Dungeons and Dragons. You're the fighter, you pick the acolyte background. Like that's what it sounds like, which can be entirely fun, but I don't think I see that, but I don't think that's equal to like reworking how clerics work or their codex, or
No, definitely
to
not.
clerics in the world, right? Like I think it's more you can adjust your character background to be more pious in that way.
I think that's
Let me
exactly what I'm saying.
let
right?
me try rephrasing here, because Aztec Wanderer in the chat just mentioned people who worship the gods and become priests without getting magic do it for the same motivations that priests and worshippers have on actual Earth. But the thing is, on actual Earth, people worshipped the gods because they believed that it would help them in their daily lives, and that failing to do so would be a net negative in their daily lives. And as a player, there is a disconnect between a person who would worship the gods and you, if you know there is no mechanical incentive for you to do this, if you know it is strictly a flavor set piece.
I think there are a great many people in this world who will worship and pray without really expecting a lot back from it. I think there are a lot of people
my pushback
who...
is very different. Like my pushback is, I don't care that there's no mechanical incentive for this. This is an avenue for a character concept that we might think is fun, right? And this is a topic that is about creating interesting ideas for characters that we could play. And one avenue for that as a priest, like if we're talking about priests, is maybe a priest that isn't a quote unquote class priest, right? You're a class something else, and you bring priestly ways to a fighter or a rogue or a ranger. I think that could be a very fun thing. And you're not going to get mechanically benefited from it, but you're also not going to be mechanically benefited from putting that like 7 in your charisma and being an asshole, but that's still fun, and I suggest it.
Oh boy. Yeah, don't put it in strength, that's bad. Put it in charisma instead.
I guess my point be more, because like I've done that too, right? Like in one of Neal's one-shots, I played the fighter who was a religious zealot, right? But like, if you're looking to drive character ideas as a standard mode of play, building them into the system and giving them like a whole mechanical design of their own is a way that you get people to follow up with these things en masse. If you want a world where there's lots of people who are not clerics but still do priestly things, there should be like something in the mechanics to reflect that and to incentivize that.
Sure. Or not, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think there's a lot of ways to do it, and if you need mechanical incentives to be a priest, then don't play the fighter who's blessed by the gods and worships them by punching people in the face. But I think they're all valid approaches depending on styles and gameplay preferences.
I also think that world building can bridge that gap, right? If you as a player are running into NPCs who are consistently and always going to the altar to sacrifice a goat to make sure that their birth goes well, right, for their cousin, and leave salt on the windowsills to prevent the bad spirits of Verasi to sneak in and steal their soul while they're sleeping, and like will always like cut off like a third of their corn and throw it into the forest for Agepa's pigs as part of their harvest, right? You see these rituals over and over and over, right? Then like that will reinforce it similarly to mechanically. I think that like that gap, yes, you're not being mechanically incentivized to be a priest, but like you can be incentivized through reinforced narrative structure to be similar or be different in a meaningful way.
Sure, but at a certain point, the narrative is then going to enmesh with mechanics, where like if your players start to do godly things in your setting where everybody does that because that's what you do to keep your community alive, players who shun them might find themselves facing new challenges as they earn their scorn, or players who do well might like get benefits from it because that's all wrapped into the narrative as well at that point. Like adventures will be born of people either like shirking or following the gods.
Yeah, but isn't that how you build adventures naturally anyway, right? Like even if we strip away religion from it, like if you run into a village that never goes into the Ghostwood and then you chop a tree down in the Ghostwood, right? Don't you build adventure off of that too?
Sure. My point being that is something that takes a lot of like building on the world side of things. So like from say Neal's world's perspective, which already has a lot of things established and hasn't done that up to this point, that's a bigger shift than like putting in a mechanical backdrop to it. Was more my point.
What mechanics would you add then to incentivize spirituality or godliness amongst player characters?
Ooh, well,
don't put them in as quest givers.
Quest givers, okay.
No, I would say that it's more a case of like, if we're talking purely mechanical things, the idea that you could give things to the gods in exchange for some sort of like fleeting bonus back, right? Like you could sacrifice to them and get like the equivalent of inspiration in 5e, maybe something more meaningful than that. But like the idea that you get small mechanical bonuses for doing your responsibilities as a religious person. Just like those little things, that little bit of added luck that keeps you alive on the battlefield.
Well, like you gave money to a homeless guy, so you get +1 to AC for this combat encounter?
Or like, you sacrifice your favorite sword to the god of war, like you melted it down and kept the handle to like forge a new blade out of it. at great like personal expense to yourself, and like maybe this sword is magical now because it's been something blessed by the god of war.
That doesn't sound like a small thing or a small bonus. That sounds like a great endeavor with a great bonus.
That was a bigger endeavor, yeah, but that's like an example, right? The idea that you're giving something up to get something back.
I do think that you could do something similar to what Neal was saying, but instead of bonuses, it's like you are a good Marthan if you give money that you have available to those in need. And you came across somebody who is in need and chose not to give them anything. So now you are less likely to be effective in your next combat, right? Like take a -1 or something, or you until you right this wrong, you are now at a penalty to hit or to cast magic.
But again, these are like pretty big things then, because that penalty is going to stick with you for a long time. It's probably going to be a multi-session penalty unless you immediately get the whole party to turn around, abandon the objective you're on, and then go right this wrong, which as we discussed earlier,
sounds like you shouldn't do the wrong thing in the first place.
Yeah, it sounds like you better give some money to that homeless person.
Yeah, but then like imagine that in an actual game where someone like you mention in passing there's a beggar on the street and everyone just keeps going. You're like, all right, cleric, you get a penalty of 1 in combat because you didn't give money to the beggar, and the cleric's like, dude, that's fucking stupid. I didn't know I was going to get penalties.
Framing on the GM's part at that point, right? If you're going to create those situations should come with a cost, right? There should be a reason that the player would not want to do them, and they should be clearly incentivized as like a moment, like a moral decision for you to make. Right?
So again, now we're not talking about small things. Now we're talking about fairly major events that are going on. Like the idea of taking small moments and turning them into something of substance is cool, but I think it's really fucking hard to do well. And that's what I was talking about. The clerics don't, like the players won't necessarily know unless you spoon feed it to them that they need to do these things. You could say like you see a beggar on the street and you know if you don't give them money, that's not in the way of your god. So you are obligated to give them money or suffer penalties in combat. And then your player's like, cool, I give them some money, and you move on. Like if you want the character to naturally do that stuff and go out of their way to fulfill these like ethos, they need to be able to do it automatically without you saying, here is a thing and here is a consequence for you not doing the thing. Otherwise they'll just like, you know what I mean?
I think it's meaningless and uninteresting to just have regular mundane events like that. Like we can just assume that a good Marthan always gives money to the beggar on the street, but it is more interesting to have a entire caravan of poor who have been driven out of their lands. Like either zombies have come or a lich lord has killed most of them. They are destitute, and they come to the player's hometown where they have built their stronghold, and they ask the players to clothe and feed and give them shelter, and the players can choose to do so at great cost and receive the benefits of being good Marthans, or the players could choose not to because the cost is too great, but then also potentially not receive the benefits of being good Marthans, or even angering the like Marthan pantheon, right?
Yeah, and it could be the kind of thing that like is wrapped into adventures. Like that caravan of people in desperate need might show up on the road when you're in the middle of an adventure, right? You're like chasing somebody across the road, and like these guys are here and they want your help, and it'd be a pain in the ass, not just because it would cost money, but it would take time, and you're in the middle of something right now. Like, are you going to go out of your way and like put your adventure at risk to do the right thing by your like religious tenets, or do you shirk them here to get the job done right now? And that like has pros and cons associated with it. Like, do you want to risk the god's displeasure for the sake of like getting your personal goals finished, or do you want to be like the good holy person and potentially lose whoever it is that you're chasing down the road?
But these then are become major story points. I thought we were trying to talk about ways you
wrap
could
into your
introduce.
adventures, because adventures are the bread and butter.
Those are major story points.
I thought we were trying to talk about ways to introduce clerics as like minor actions and day-to-day things,
but
not like turning.
That is how you do that. That is a mundane thing in the course of adventuring. But the day-to-day and the mundane are not things that you bring up to at the table, right? They aren't adventure. By framing a mundane thing in this way and showing a major choice, right, you have created something interesting for your players to engage in. And it reinforces a worldview, right, that shows them what their minor day-to-day would look like.
Yeah, and like, because like, generally speaking, you don't continually roleplay the little things that don't really matter, right? At a certain point, the downtime between adventures is going to be something that gets narrated away by the GM in a couple of sentences, and you're going to mention like our Martha cleric is spending their time in like the working with the temple as like a reception for the poor, giving people a meal every day and a roof over their heads or something like that. And that's just something that you narrate away in a sentence. And then the points that the players engage with are the things that define their piety with the bigger decisions they make in adventures.
Here's another thing that I like is maybe you don't bring up the fact that they didn't give to the beggar. You want a more small scale thing. Treat it as an opportunity to take from the players in a different way. Okay, there's a beggar, it's small, it's meaningless, they don't give to it. The adventure goes on, it continues, it finishes, they get back, and then when you're thinking up things to do for your next sessions, hey, they didn't give to that beggar. I wonder what punishment Martha might give, right? Maybe their home is now compromised, right? The guardian of the hearth of the home is upset with them. So I don't know, what is a plague or a penalty on a home? Like maybe it is infested with vermin, or plague gets in, or maybe they're attacked, right? Like maybe now like a bandit comes and like there's a punishment directly associated to that, which you as a DM can then like show them the consequences of not being on the up and up with their god.
I feel like I've kind of lost the crux of what we're talking about. I feel like the objective has changed and now I'm confused.
I think the point that Greg and I are hitting at is like, you can't really do just like a bunch of compounding plus and minus ones tied to like little meaningless scenarios, because that's A, a bitch to track, and B, it's not that interesting to engage with. And we're talking more like how little things that players choose to engage or don't engage with can be seeds for later adventures, or how bigger things can be compounding issues in the middle of adventures that define how your characters set their priorities.
That feels like where we are, but I have no idea how we got here and what that has to do specifically with clerics. I feel like we were talking about like ways to mechanize clerics culturally, and now it feels like I don't know. I'm just confused and lost and don't know how we got here and don't know what we're talking about anymore.
We were talking about how to play holy people who aren't clerics.
I would like to make a comment about the whole cleric thing. So I feel like most people, when they create their D&D world, they make this nice pantheon, right? And like with domains and what the gods represent and yada yada yada. Yet most of the time you're going to have very few day-to-day religious encounters, right? Like if you have a religious encounter, it's probably going to be the cleric who goes to a temple to do something, but it's not in the day-to-day. They like have a situation where anything clerical would matter. I feel like there's very little in religious encounters out there, which is not the party goes to visit the cleric in the temple. In general. And I fear that the more of these encounters you feed into your world, you also have to accept that that makes your world way more religious than it is at the moment, right? Which can be the thing you want, but you'll have to accept that then religion is like one of the big pillars of your world, even though all you wanted to do was just have more people who can have clerical meaning in some kind of way, and suddenly your entire world has grown way more religious than it was before, which can be good, but you know, it can shift the focus from what you intentionally wanted like to do.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was saying about clerics being driven by culture and faith and like the society and the religion. They're very like, the essence of their character is caught up in in the lore and in the culture, and it's sometimes awkward. And I kind of want to just get rid of clerics. I hate clerics and druids.
To be fair, the reason you want to get rid of clerics is because they have healing spells, and you would otherwise be very happy.
That's the second point. Like, we could just drop the healing spells and make everyone play clerics of non-heal. You know what? Everyone should play a human fighter and nothing else. That's gonna make me happy. That's all I want.
One thing I like, which is not inherent with second edition, I guess, is when you play campaigns with such a thing as a fame, what do you call it? Like a fame rule, okay, like a fame mechanic, which is like the more stuff you do, the more fame you can accumulate, and out of combat that can give you benefits, right? Obviously, D&D sucks at out of combat benefits, right? But if there's a way to give player characters things outside of combat that they get by being famous, popular, pious, right? Then you can feed clerical people, as in fighters with a clerical background, into a fame system, as in, oh, we know this guy, he's the one who, whatever, you know, the great feeder of beggars, you know. He's gonna stay in the inn for free tonight, or we're gonna give him the farm over there, or whatever, you know, however your fame system works. But you can achieve a lot if you manage to put mechanics in that reward players outside of combat for background things without like making your whole world crash down just because you're now feverishly trying to accomplish something in combat. But I'm saying like D&D is not good with that stuff, so that's, you know, that's difficult in general. But there is a way to mechanize things with out of combat rewards, and that goes really well with like developing more interesting clerical approaches to characters, because then you get the whole, you know, society culture aspect in there without trying to find in combat mechanics that work with that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? You know, you guys what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of difficult because we don't have that in Dungeons and Dragons, but
It makes sense. Mm-hmm. I guess that's a good capper on that kind of topic, right? Like, I think you summed up very well the kind of disconnect between adventuring and the mundane day-to-day.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you all then. Mm-hmm. If we are unsatisfied with the role that clerics and religion play in your world building, there is a Chinese, I think it could be Buddhist, but I think it's specifically Chinese tradition of cultivation, and it is the narrative or literature tradition of people who cultivate within themselves like a spiritual strength and purity, and through this process of cultivating good energy and righteousness or purity or whatever the virtue system is, it can be expressed through great deeds, right? When you see Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and the wise women are flying around kind of impossibly, it's more than a stylization. It's leaning on this culture of or this tradition of culture of cultivation that you can find in many like Chinese stories. What do you think of a cleric as personal like cultivator? Like, I follow the 1,000 rules that, you know, guide my life to build character and strength of my own like spiritual energy, and this is how I cast spells, quote unquote, is like I have the powers of a cleric through my own personal growth, and like this is how I am clerical or godly, like through my own self.
Incredibly like a 5e monk to me. I feel like that's exactly what they envisioned when they made the 5e monk, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, the whole my way, right? this is how I want it. This is the way I want to achieve. This is the person I want to be. This is the rules I follow. And I want to do this in a spiritual path that is not necessarily linked to a specific god. Is a very monk.
But why
That
must
also-
it be expressed as a monk class? Why could that not be expressed through other class powers?
I was saying it has to be. I'm just saying I think that's pretty much like
Mhm.
verbatim what the monk is in 5e. You know, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
I feel like the sort of internal spiritual power kind of thing, the idea of like personal spiritual enlightenment, reminds me a lot more of monks and druids, and is not what clerics are built as in Dungeons and Dragons. And that's mostly my thing, is like, I've always read clerics as the people who draw their power from worshiping a figure greater than them, right? It's always been how I've seen clerics be built. And like, if you want to play the one who just kind of like draws it from the world around them or their own personal spiritual enlightenment, that's your like, you can do that, but that's a different class. You know, that's your monk or your druid or I don't know, I guess not a warlock, sorcerer, I guess.
A warlock with less steps.
I think I'm just a really, really old-timey and very boring D&D person. I don't think I ever want to live in a D&D world. I love other systems very much. You know, their clerics are very different. I don't want to live in a D&D world where the cleric is not the holy warrior. If it was for me, you can throw paladins out of the fucking window because nobody needs them, right? Cleric is everything I need. Like, for me, a cleric is a holy warrior, right? That's what is their essence. And you can try to like strive away from that and find other concepts. But in Dungeons and Dragons, that's the core essence of the cleric. And you might not like that, but like that is for me the easiest and clearest and most fun thing about them. And everything else can be a background for other characters or can be like a druid class or a monk class. But like, I don't think you can take the warrior out of the cleric. For me, right? Like, I don't think that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think
that's
that
just the
goes
concept
back-
I have for those. Which is like, why do you even need paladins? Honestly, just fuck that. Nobody needs them.
I think that goes back to a question Neal had about what makes a cleric. And it's the cleric is the person that adventures, right? There, you could be a pious individual that maybe even could call upon the gods in your daily life, but what makes you a cleric is that you are the warrior. You go out and adventure.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with for me, the priest is a 5e background acolyte, right? You can be anything, but your background is the acolyte. You walk around with a holy symbol, you know, you bless your friend's wedding, and that's about the extent of, you know, holiness you have. And then the cleric comes in, and the cleric is the holy warrior, and there's a clear distinction between the two of them, right? For me, right? But that's, you know, that's just how I see it. So, but it's just for Dungeons and Dragons. Honestly, I think for Dungeons and Dragons, it's the only thing I've seen that's fun, in essence, right? Because every time people try to strive away from these things and try to come up with like interesting character, I just look at these things. It's like, it's people trying to artificially pull away from core concepts so they can encompass things that these concepts don't, and you can tell these things just don't fit, right? Like, I disagree with plenty of paladin stuff that has been made up for 5e, for example, because I just think it's nonsense when it comes to, oh, you can follow whatever you want. Like, no, dude, you're a paladin, you're a holy warrior. You can't just be like, man, I really like, I don't know, you know, pick a feeling, you know, I want to be the paladin of sadness. Like, no, you don't. You're a holy warrior, dude, you know, stay on the fucking carpet. Like, that's it for me, right?
The paladin of sadness just keeps singing Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah,
by
I mean,
himself.
they have they made this statement. Look, you know, your thing, whatever, your oath can be related to whatever you want. Like, no, I fucking disagree with that. It's hard. You're a holy warrior. Stay on. You know, that's what you do.
Oh, Faye, you're activating my memories of ranting about the 5e paladin like a sleeper agent right now.
I just feel like I have like. It is incredibly interesting to put faith into TTRPG campaigns, especially since so many people play these games that feel very distant to religion and following religions, right? And how incredibly interesting is it to have people that try to abstain mainly from something in the real life, confronted in a different mythical manner in a game, right? And them having to actually like think about these things, right? That is incredibly interesting. But in Dungeons and Dragons, okay, we do not have that. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's you are a holy warrior, full stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I can live with that. I'm happy with that. You know, that's fine. Just don't try to come up with this weird system. Like it's just that's just what it is. And then if you want a priest, that's cool. He's Maximilian. His background is he's an acolyte. You gave him a holy symbol when he was 5. That's all there is to it. Like there's nothing more. You know, just keep it simple.
I've got to play a fighter who's a priest and like cause light wounds just by punching people in the face, and like cast sanctuary by holding a door shut while the rest of the party like relaxes or something.
Just
blesses people by like ripping off his shirt and flexing, you know?
Yeah, that's a totally
oh my god,
cleric.
I really want to do this now.
That's not a fighter with a clerical background. That's a cleric.
No,
that's
I mean like he casts cause wounds. It's no spells. He's just like punching people and saying cause light wounds.
Okay. You're not giving him a god. He's just gotcha.
Withdrawal.
That's just a bar fighter, my dude. That's not
I'm gonna do
like it. I approve.
I'm gonna do
can
it.
bring that to my table.
Oh, so
All right,
much for
Greg.
bringing more religion into the world, right?
Religion of my fist, bro.
Yeah, baby. Oh my god. You guys are ridiculous.
All right,
8 out of 10. 8 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh, fuck off. I should have never asked that question. It's been going down since then.
There's one more kind of basic concept that I've seen a lot of clerics of, and I'm interested to think of your thoughts on it, or what concepts you would find interesting to play in it. And that would be cleric as evil cleric.
Well, I think that's the easiest cleric to do because yeah, it's way easier to play an evil character than a good character, because anything can be justifiably evil, and it's very hard to make things justifiably good that actually feel it that way.
But if you're justifiably evil, are you interesting?
Totally.
Like, how do you make an interesting evil cleric then?
I don't know. There's like a billion ways. I don't know. It seems pretty. All right, evil cleric that is justifiably interesting in a multi-person party, right? So your cleric can, I mean, here's the thing, is that you can justify any evil act. So your cleric wants to, like, you pass the beggar in the street, the cleric of Martha up front gives them some coins, the evil cleric, like, pushes the beggar over and takes their cup and takes all their coins, and, you know, casts silence on them so they can't, like, cry out to the rest of the party. You know, the evil cleric there's murder, there's mayhem, there's chaos that can be caused, there's, like, you know, torturing enemies, even if you're not necessarily getting anything out of it. Like, it's easy to do evil things and find a way to make it fun and interesting. It's hard to do good things and find a way to make it fun and interesting, because good things usually require self-sacrifice for no benefit. But if you're going to get a benefit out of something by doing something evil, that's pretty easy to get your head around. That's most player characters in a nutshell.
You're saying interesting, and I feel like we're talking about completely different things, because I feel like the required self-sacrifice of good characters is what makes them interesting characters, and the fact that evil people just don't give a shit and do whatever benefits them in the moment is why they're often not interesting characters.
I mean, that's some great, like, high-level lore there, but if you want to get down into the dirtiness of actual gameplay, I see very, very, very little self-sacrifice from anyone ever, you know? When was the last time a player character really did something that was self-sacrificing?
If I had to, like, make a critique of you here, Neal, I think people do that because you never drive any sort of engagement with good characters, and everybody is encouraged to play evil because everybody in the world is a selfish shitter and nobody ever does good things.
Ooh, that's spicy.
That's just... And that's something that's like just kind of how you run NPCs, right? Everybody's like very selfish, very out for themselves. I think you create a world where people are just kind of driven into doing evil because there's no real, like, underlying structure for people who want to do good.
I just feel like I've never seen I shouldn't say never, but rarely see player characters who have characters who desire to be good from the get-go. And I feel like I normally have to shove them into directions of
Well, there's
goodliness.
definitely a water spirit that wanted that very badly.
Well,
Also, I want to call out like Argzats in the chat saying like, oh, so exactly like the real world. Then there's a lot of shitty people in positions of power in the real world. We also like when the pandemic first started here in America, like in Portland, you had various like mutual aid groups that started to collect donations in order to make hand sanitizer to distribute to homeless people. Right? Like there are lots of people in this world who go out of their way to do good things without even the promise of reward, and they build like networks to help other people. Like there's plenty of examples of good people in the world, and the fact that they're not in positions of institutional power might be a critique of institutional power, but is not a sign that the world is full of nothing but evil.
It is also incredibly weird to go around initiating encounters to display yourself as a good person. That is weird. What's less weird is, here's a situation, would you like to help? And I have to agree, there's not many encounters which are like, you can help. Are you going to help? Like most encounters are going to be, oh, I'm going to give you this kind of reward, or, you know, there's something about the situation that gives you something back at least. Like, there are very few encounters that are going to be like, here's this family, are you going to, like, you know, if there's a fight going on, right, there's a family, you're trying to protect them, then your reward is you kill the monsters, you get the XP, you get the loot, right? That's not selfless, that's obviously helping yourself, right? There are very few encounters where you can actually help as a player that are given to you, that are not like, I'm gonna walk around town and give everybody a gold piece, right?
Yeah, I think exactly what she's saying is that to be a good character, you actually need to do things that are truly selfless, and if you're getting a reward for it, then it's not a selfless good act anymore, you're getting a benefit from it. So like, if you have NPCs who reward good actions by the player characters, they're no longer actually good actions, now they're selfish actions that just happen to be like thematically good, sort of, but you're still getting rewarded for it, so it's not actually all that good.
Let me give like an example here, right?
Please.
And this one is maybe more just like classical, like martial adventure. But if you had, say, like a paladin, sorry, Faye, who was like constantly doing the right thing and wasn't like stealing magical items, but you like, they don't have money, they don't have like the goal to like loot everybody that they fight and collect all these powerful magical items. One thing that could be part of it from them doing good deeds, their temple might say, hey, you're doing amazing work in keeping the community safe. We're going to like bequeath you this magic sword that will help you do your job better. You don't own this sword, it's ours, but we're giving it to you to do your job better, right? Like systems of good trying to do acts of good in the world can create, like, they're going to have access to resources that they can supply good adventurers with, right? As one example of like, you don't need to be the murder hobo who collects every item they can possibly find in order to get powerful things in the world. Because like-minded individuals who want to do good things alongside you are going to be able to pool resources to make that happen.
But now you've just mechanized selfish rewards for being good. You do good things, the church is going to give you magic items. Give the church all your money, do whatever the church wants, the church will reward you with these things. You're no longer doing good, now you're just following some, you know, quest giver who happens to like say that they're being good and happens to have a church affiliation. Like, again, this is not actually truly good action. This is selfish action disguised as good action.
Being entirely selfless 100% of the time is not a thing that exists in the world.
Certainly, you don't have to be selfless 100% of the time.
You shouldn't be treated as if you're bad because you act in self-interest sometimes and want to be motivated.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but to pretend that, like, you know, to pretend that... No, never mind, I don't have it quite yet. I don't have my words yet.
Okay, can I throw in? I'm going to throw in one more objection here, Neal.
Please.
Okay, I'm actually personally insulted because that Cleric of Martha I played, I think Sarah was genuinely one of the better people in your world out there. Because she did stuff like stabilizing her own enemies, right? In spite of her sister making fun of her all the time, making sure when they killed a dragon that it died as painlessly as possible, right? Before it got stabbed in the eye by her sister. Going into the temple and interacting with like the other followers there, even though it didn't give her any like sort of benefit whatsoever, right? I think she did like, I don't know, plenty of stuff that was not incentivized by you, but that did come from the character, and she got zero benefit out of that. Because guys, I'm telling you, at the end of the fucking campaign, I tried to talk to the villagers to get them to help me, and they absolutely said no. So I never got anything out of that, I swear to God. But like, it is possible to do that.
Sarah was a good person. I would agree with you on that one.
But it's fucking difficult to do if you're in a party as well.
Yeah.
Because if the party's all on board, that's nice. If you have to argue about being good then, right, for the sole reason of being good and not getting any benefit, that's difficult. And if that causes infighting because other people are more on the I like to be rewarded for when we make sacrifices path, right, that causes a lot of like party dynamics that you're not gonna like. I mean, if there are 4 really good people out there and they're working together, then that's fun. If you're the only like selfless person in the party, I don't think that's going to be fun.
I think that's why Sarah came out as a good character, is because the rest of the party was like, let them die, who cares? And Sarah's like, no, I'm not just they are enemies, but I'm still going to heal them. We're still going to give them life. I'm going to go out of my way to do these good things, even though it is being fought against by my party. I think those are the things that made Sarah a actually good character, is that she had to struggle to do these things.
Difficult, because you get the struggle with it, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, why should I put myself into this struggle? Right? If being real good and selfless is that hard, or I could just be the ambiguous kind, right? Who mostly does good things, but sometimes steals the gold from the beggar, and I'm still kind of likable, you know? Like, that is easier to do. And you're still kind of good, right?
I guess we're getting to the point that it's not always fun to be good.
Pure self-interest with not being good, and I think that that's a philosophical stance that I just cannot agree with.
Yeah, but that's how Neal's alignment system works, right? Like for Neal,
what alignment system?
If you act in self-interest, Neal's alignment system says you are bad, and if you act out of pure altruism with no other motivation, then you're good. And that's a philosophically poor system.
What? I think that self-serving is evil and altruism is good, and no one's ever going to be perfectly self-serving, and no one's ever going to be perfectly altruistic. You're not going to survive that way. You need to look out for yourself at some level. We don't live in a truly utopian world. But
we live in a society.
You refuse to engage on that with any nuance. And that is why it doesn't work for me.
It also
let's go back to evil characters so that we stop this. You think they're easy to make interesting. What is an evil character that is not a murder hobo that takes everything they want at all times? Because that's pretty much all I ever see, and I find that character to be utterly uninteresting.
But you say that your evil characters are always the evil characters that you see are always just like grab everything and kill everyone.
Pretty much. I
agree. That's a common evil character. Right? That's a really easy to get to evil character.
When people say I want to play an evil cleric, right? Usually what that means is they want to kill everything that they see and take every item and steal everything they can. Right? And that's all I ever really see. I don't see nuanced take on that at all.
I'm with Greg on this one, and that's why when I was still using Dungeons and Dragons alignments, I had a rule of no evil characters, because if people wanted to play the kind of shitty person, that's what neutral is for.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you get from the neutral people.
I think. Go ahead.
I think it is very difficult to make a. Oh god, that's. I need a better word for this. It's difficult to make an interesting, really good character. And it's difficult to make an interesting, really evil character. I think both these things are pretty difficult to do. I think as a player, it's always easier to lean a little on the shitty side, because then you don't have to worry too much about altruism or anything, and you can just follow whatever you really want in that situation, which is rewards that you get from certain game mechanics, right? Like loot and shit. But I think in general, making a character that is strong in their alignment, interesting, is very difficult, no matter whether it is really good or really evil. And I see that very, very rarely. And most characters I see that are interesting are somewhere in between the, chaotic good, chaotic neutral kind of range, I guess.
I think it is difficult to have a character whose focus is morality, good or evil. But I think if you want to not have that be your main focus, but as like, a minor focus, you can do it in fun ways. And I think you can be evil in fun and interesting ways. It's hard in a party setting, but as a solo session or a solo character sort of D&D campaign, you can do some really fun evil things. You can like disrupt social networks. You can just like bring down society in areas very carefully for your own desires or purposes. Like you can do evil things in fun ways, but it requires like focus and it to be the main theme. And it's usually not fun to have like, all right, our campaign is about morality. It's usually not enough of a focus to be a fun major storyline,
Yeah. But I've also, so you have your Ties of Death campaign coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold my breath to see if there can be an evil group that is actually interesting, because every evil character that has been interesting so far that I've seen, not in like a solo thing, but like most evil characters are interesting if they're in solo settings or if it is played by a player who can contain their evil actions in a way that it doesn't fuck over the entire party, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if your entire party is evil, I'm still curious to see if that can actually be interesting, or if that is just going down murder hobo lane so fast that you don't even have to blink before you just get there and you're just like, okay, how much XP do we get?
I think when we say like we want to play an evil party, the initial reaction to that statement is like, there's a spectrum. Good is over here, evil is over here. If you're playing an evil party, you are on the complete evil end of the spectrum. When in reality, I think if you want to do an evil party, not good, but like you need to be not all the way on evil, but just like evil shifted. So your best actions are somewhere in the neutral, maybe slightly good area, and your worst actions aren't 100% evil, but are like 75% evil. You need to not be like tilt shifted all the way to evil. You just need to be off center.
I do find that incredibly difficult because most good parties, and I put that in quotation marks, are already leaning more neutral than good, right? If you have a good party, they're gonna be not good, like they're gonna be leaning straight to the middle because of what people want. Like I find very few good parties out there. I mean, maybe I'm just playing with the wrong people and my friends are all evil. That's possible, but I find very few
gamers are monsters.
Really good parties out there. So most parties I play with are inherently already leaning towards neutral or towards more self-serving than altruistic or whatever you wanna do it. Which is why I think a party that already leans a little bit more evil, in most cases, is gonna be already like halfway out of the window towards evil. Right?
You know what a good evil party would be? And when I say good, I mean like a well done evil party would basically be
party.
No, would be like
perfect.
the crew of Firefly, to bring it back around to Firefly again. I think the characters in Firefly are presented as good because of the framing of the director and the writer and everything. But if you take a third party perspective, they are looting random ships, they are murdering people to get their objectives, they're happy to like cause violence and chaos and stab people, they're happy to evade the law, happy to actively undermine authority and the central government wherever possible. Like, I think they are an example of an evil party done well, and just happen to be like framed in this rosy light of Joss Whedon being like, aren't they so wonderful?
But that framing is important because you as a viewer would not generally think, oh, they are evil. Like the framing matters. And like for an evil party, you wouldn't frame it like that.
Yeah, I say you reframe the crew of the Serenity slightly, and they become a really interesting evil party.
I don't agree with this.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
maybe
don't agree
Jane.
either.
Jane kind of sucks. He's a dick, and he
Totally.
might qualify.
Mhm.
The rest of the crew regularly engages in acts of philanthropy. They do undermine the central government, but the central government sucks ass anyways. So there's nothing evil
We
about
shouldn't
that.
associate criminality with evil either.
Yes, they are.
Like being opposed to authority
That's true.
or breaking the law is not inherently evil.
Yes, and they regularly go out of their way to help people in situations. They work like they steal the medicine from the train, right? And
Mhm.
realize that the situation is like, oh no, this is medicine that's going to a colony that is being racked with sickness. And they realize, oh fuck, we can't take this. This would be wrong. And they go out of their way to bring the medicine back. They avoid killing people when they don't have to. Like he fights the duel against that one cocky shitbag who wants to marry God, I don't remember any of these people's names, but he fights that sword duel and he winds up beating the guy, and he could kill him, and he just kind of pokes him in the shoulder instead because it's
Stabs
funny.
him a whole bunch of times to cause him pain and suffering, but doesn't actually kill him.
In the
Yeah,
shoulder, it's fine.
sure.
It's legit. He deserved it.
He's actively dishonoring the person. Though. That's in that scene. They're making the point that like killing him would be the kindness. Killing him would like let him die with honor. But instead, I'm just gonna stab him. So now he has to live with this shame for the rest of his life, which I think is a really
according to
interesting
Neal,
evil action.
Murdering somebody in cold blood is the right thing to do, and
In
makes
this
you not
social
evil.
setting, killing him would have been the honorable thing to do, the right thing to do in that society.
Honorable
death in that
and
situation
right are not equitable concepts.
not always in this situation, according to
No.
that culture, that
Murdering
would
a
have been the
person
right
in
thing to
cold blood
do.
is not preferable to not murdering someone.
Yes.
Ever.
I'm with Greg on this one.
I think in a situation of a duel, in the cultural setting that they were portraying there, that would be the right thing to do, and letting him live is the shameful, dishonorable thing to do, and that's the point that they're making by the like.
Hold on. I
and
think we
evil
are
not the same. They're not the same concepts.
I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I think
I think one of the problems that we're running into as well with this discussion is something that a lot of people run into with Dungeons and Dragons is discussions about nebulous concepts of morality are not really interesting or applicable in most contexts. And what part of the problem you run into is like, we're going to make an evil party. And it's like, what the fuck is an evil party? That doesn't mean anything in of itself.
this is a very good point.
Instead, if you're trying to build something, you look at what does this character value and what do they want to do, right? The character who wants to get a lot of money so they can live in luxurious comfort isn't even necessarily evil, but the steps they take to get there define who they are and could be presented as good or evil in the process. The person who wants to start a poorhouse and create a place where even like the lost and the poor in society can have a roof over their heads and at least one meal a day is a person who is trying to do something in the world, and the good or the evil of their actions can be shown in the steps they take to get there in order to build this thing, in order to get the money to do it. Like, people don't think in terms of raw concepts of good or evil. We think in terms of things that we can do in the world and try to define those values and those actions by their moral qualities. And that's one of the biggest issues I see with people who try to define good and evil parties is you're not defining anything. You're taking a nebulous concept before you have an action or a belief to map it to.
Which is why I don't like it when you do that from the get-go. But I do strongly think still, if you say we're going to play an evil party or we want to play an evil campaign, that includes like a certain amount of standard actions you would find justifiable in your codex, no matter what it is, right? If you have an evil party, like if that is, you know, your assumption, then I will guarantee you there's not one reasonable person out there who will think this party's never going to kill anybody. Because that's not an expectation you would have for an evil campaign, unless you're pretty crazy, right? Like there's still a certain amount of base assumptions you could make about that campaign, no matter where you are standing on the moral codex, right? These people are not going around and all they're going to do in their campaign is give out gold to the poor. Like, that's not what the evil campaign... Like, there's still a certain amount, right, of qualities that campaign's going to have. And I think, in general, a campaign that, like, might have these base values is going to be difficult to pull off in an interesting way. if you set that expectation, that is, I think you can have a perfectly fine campaign where you start playing as we're just going to be adventurers, we're just going to do our thing, and maybe it turns evil, and maybe that's still going to be good. The thing I'm worried about is the set of base assumptions you're making for the campaign before it starts, which might lead it down a path that I find inherently uninteresting. Right?
I agree. The statement, I want to play an evil character or an evil party, is not super meaningful in and of itself. You got to do it. It's got to be a little bit more complicated than just we do bad. We'll see how it works out. We'll report back in a couple weeks.
It's just going to be a party. It's just as every other party as well. They're just.
It's going to be a regular D&D party.
As every other party out there. Which is then is that really, then you could make it full circle. And if you really wanted to play something different than you usually play, did you achieve that, or have you just realized that you're always evil no matter what you play? That's the question.
I'd like to think that there's a way to make interesting evil characters.
Nobody said there's no way to make not interesting evil characters.
Yeah.
I just think an entire party is difficult.
I was hoping that we would have a discussion on like ways to do it that was more interesting and not realize that Neal supports murder. But you told me that I had to play a neutral evil character for Hardcore Heroes, and so I shaped the character around being a pretty much bastard. And I felt like I was kind of the antagonist of at least the first part of that campaign, but we still had a character that helped the party and like tried to make sure that they achieved their goals while pushing for like his own agenda, right? And and sometimes would use the party to try to see that through, right? And so I think that one of the ways that I would make an evil cleric is to find an agenda or like concept that is interesting to you that you would like to achieve. That might be for Krob, it was becoming like a Godfather-esque figure, right? I wanted to run the world. And I think for a cleric, it could be as simple as like, I want to eventually revive this old god that I worship, right? And I'm going to work to make that happen while still working within the framework of the party and its goals and making that happen. Like, are there concepts like that, right? Are there interesting thoughts you might have that could be interesting evil characters, right?
Characters are clerics inherently. Because every character has the part where the better your agenda is, the better your character is, right? That counts for evil and for good. For evil, just more so because you really don't want to overstep and be the asshole in the party, right? If you're driven by nothing and you're just a mad, bad backstabber, nobody likes that shit, right? So you better have an agenda ready when you need to justify yourself. I think the really difficult question is, if you have an evil cleric, then, the specific question would be, what is a specifically evil, clerical-driven thing your character pursues, right? That goes beyond I want to live forever.
Okay. How about like, I was wronged by this other religion and I'm going to destroy it? Because you're very quickly walking down a road of genocide there. I think most clerics who
that sounds pretty evil to me.
Yeah, you're probably not going to wind up being a great person, and you might have like a solid justification for getting there. Maybe this religion has been like there's been, I don't know, like a holy war or like something approaching that for a long time, and they like, I don't know, murdered your family, and you go, I'm gonna destroy this entire religion. I'm gonna burn all of its temples. I'm gonna kill all of its worshippers. I'm going to wipe it off the face of the earth because it's a bad thing in the world.
That is valid way to drive a character. I think the problem is that it's not specific enough, right? Because that is just, I'm walking down the road, I'm killing everybody. That's not interesting, right? Like eventually. What you would want to do, I guess, is make it in smaller steps. So it's like your overall goal is to hurt or destroy whatever that religion as much as possible. Your goal is, I want to steal a relic from the Holy Temple, and I want to, what's the opposite of blessed? God, I can't come up with the word. Defile it, I guess. I want to defile it and, make a show out of that, for example. Like, that's a very specific goal that you as a character can pursue on your way to just drag this other religion entirely through the mud, right? I feel like you need really small, like, that's already a pretty big goal, but you need smaller goals to make your evil cleric interesting that goes, that gives you stuff to do, actually, which is not just, well, you can do whatever because it's all going to fit in with this, right? But no, it's like,
I think if you want to
to
take this concept of destroying another religion and do it in a fun, interesting way, you don't go down the genocide path. You go down the, I'm trying to kill an idea. I could kill all the followers of this religion and more would just arrive. I want to destroy the religion by supplanting it with my faith or this other faith. So I'm going to go out of my way to make the priests and clerics of this religion fail in public, visible ways. I'm going to putrefy their holy water right before a certain ceremony. I'm going to have them fail when they try to defeat monsters by helping the monsters. And then I will step in and be like, look, I've defeated the monsters. This is fake gods. My God is the real one. Worship me and my people. I think if you want to go about the destroying a religion, you go by destroying the idea, which is not necessarily killing the people, but making them look faulty and weak and pitiful and get people to turn their back on the true God or the true religion for your sham of one. I think that's how you do it, and in a fun way. And as a quick side note, I think Krob is a great example of an evil character because he wasn't pure genocide evil. He's like, hey, my sister or cousin, whoever it is in a really shitty spot. I want to help her out. But also, we're going to steal this shit from the temple and we're going to do this thing and I'm going to set myself up in a position. But he was a relatable character who had objectives. His general goal was very self-serving, but he wasn't an evil bastard at every single possible moment. And I think that can be a trap that people fall into when they're like, I'm a bad person. What's the bad thing to do in this exact moment? And it becomes one-dimensional instead of a multi-dimensional Krob evil. Krob was evil, but he was fucking cool. Okay, long tangent, sorry.
It's okay.
I think the reason it worked for Krob is because he went in with the goal of I want to do a thing and not the goal of I'm going to be evil, right?
Yeah.
Greg was saying he had the goal of being a Godfather-esque character. I'm going to gain power and influence and run how things work in these various civilizations. And that was what he did when we got to Redport, right? He tried to build up his crime network and create a whole system there. That's what made him interesting, was that he did a thing that doesn't even necessarily have to be evil. There are a lot of underground organizations that also do a lot of philanthropy. It's
intent and impact that judge good and evil, I think, usually. And Krob walked that one line very well. Well done.
Yeah.
Good way. See, being evil's easy. Just be Krob. Just be Greg, and you can do evil characters without even trying.
I guess that was kind of the point of bringing up the cleric as evil discussion, because I know that it's a concept that I have seen a lot of people like. And so if we're talking character concepts, right, finding ways to do that in an interesting way that didn't lead to the path of I'm just going to be a bastard and murder hobo around the world.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one problem clerics also run into is the path of, if you're an evil cleric, you're gonna be a necromancer style dude, right? You're gonna be on the side of undead or blah blah blah. I find that is a very cliche thing that happens very very quickly because evil is generally hard to do. And if you just do, I don't want to do a holy cleric, I'm just going to do an unholy cleric. That comes very easily with a shift in alignment, I guess.
To look at more examples of interesting ways of making evil characters, we can look at the Joker from The Dark Knight. The Joker does evil things. He does actually murder people and blows up buildings and whatnot, but his more evil actions are like, these two ships, they have the power to sink each other, and I'm going to put them in a position where a whole group of people has to decide to be evil murderers out of self-preservation. I'm going to take this like holy righteous character, not that Batman's actually holy or righteous, he's an evil bastard in his own right, but he thinks of himself as good, and I'm going to try and destroy him and bring him down by putting him in a situation to be evil. He's trying to corrupt the system and corrupt individual people rather than just destroying everything. Destruction isn't, I mean, it is evil, but it's boring evil. Corruption is like fun, interesting evil, and I think that's a good approach for an evil cleric, is break the world order, make people fight against themselves, destroy the trust and the hope and the unity, not through destruction, but through like clever manipulation and bringing out the worst in people. And that's a fun way.
This is
to
also why some of the like more egregious Final Fantasy villains work as well, where it's like even the crazy ones who are like, I'm gonna destroy the world and everybody in it, including myself, wind up being very, very interesting.
Just don't do the haircut. I very much like, but that's hard to pull off. I'm a big fan of I am evil because I owe someone.
Huh?
Because, like, in a way which is like, I am evil because at some point something happened to me which made me indebted to someone who now has power over me and makes me do evil things. But that is very hard to do because you still want to be the person who's driving things and you don't want stuff to just happen to you. But I feel like there needs to be evil clerics, like if evil always needs to be clever, to be fun and interesting, then that's a very stark contrast to the good, kind of aloof, weird fighter, right? There needs to be like the dumb evil person that's still interesting on the opposite side. Like you need to be able to do evil apart from clever and corrupting, which is like, you know, charm and wit. There needs to be an interesting evil that is also just the dumb brute, right?
Like, so like a Jane type figure somehow. Who's like a dumb brute but happy to trade sides and is like.
But that is a really easy slippery slope down to, well, you're just an uninteresting murder hobo.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there needs to be, like, I feel like these characters need some kind of bonds that makes them interesting, or another kind of conflict that makes them interesting, even though they are more straight up evil, you know, but they are less clever. So that's like
about,
hard to do. But
what is it about Jane, the character, that makes him interesting enough that we all like and root for him a little bit, even though he's a bad person?
Oh, I didn't root for him at all. He's awful. He's the worst.
I think he seems very loyal, even though he's not. If I had to guess, because like until I think he does like a big disappointment in one of the last episodes. I can't remember, where he really double crosses them pretty badly. But before that, he seems so. Jane for me represents the kind of guy where you think maybe at some point he's gonna change. You know, maybe they can flip him over. He's not that far gone that you would think, well, he's just the evilest guy around, right? But you think maybe there is something in this universe that could make this guy flip around and become like a loyal part of the crew. And the part of you rooting for an evil person to maybe have the chance to change makes the character interesting, I think. And then it doesn't happen, and you're going home and you're thinking, well, Jane's a shit character because he didn't get a redemption arc. What the fuck, right? Like, but if Jane had a redemption arc, if there's a second season and Jane gets the redemption arc, you'd be all over that character, right? Like, I think characters that are evil, but you still think there's a chance of redemption, I think that's actually interesting.
Well, I think the other thing about Jane as well is that he's not just like comically evil. He's a self-interested guy who doesn't really have any loyalties or compassion for other people, but he's not like going around just shooting random people and having a lark as he burns down the village. He's more of the self-serving, lack of loyalty. I'm going to go where I see the winning side as being.
I think that, yeah, there's a neutered aspect to his villainy, right? Where yes, he's somebody that you might want to see shoved out of an airlock one day, but he's not so heinous that you can't put up with him most of the time, right?
And like you could see him becoming a better person. I don't think he ever does. I don't remember what happens in the movie, but
it gets canceled. Like there's nothing.
Well, there was the movie that wrapped everything up. I don't remember.
We're talking about Jane,
though. Yeah, does he die?
No, he doesn't die, but he does turn in Sam and Simon and River when they're on airlock.
That's in the show, but in the movie, what happens to him?
He survives.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything special going on. I think the worst thing he does is the turning in part, and in the movie he doesn't really do anything bad.
Okay.
He turns on his crew in the flashback episode Out of Gas, where he has Mal and Zoe at gunpoint, and then Mal and Zoe trick him and confuse him into like switching sides, and then he shoots the person he was bunking with right away.
I mean, to be fair, I think he was just engaging in like union contract negotiations there, right? They weren't giving him a fair deal. They offered him better pay and better benefits. So.
That's true. Unions aren't evil. He in the very first episode he almost turns against Mal and Zoe, but with the he says, "Oh, the pay wasn't good enough," and then Mal's like, "What happens when it is?" And he says, that'll be an interesting day." So I think he continually shows some evilness, but then like, chills out a little bit because they're trying to make him a good guy-ish.
Neal, you missed my flaming speech for redemption, by the way. I said that one thing that can make an evil character interesting is when they're teetering the line to they might be somehow redeemable. I think in general that can make a character interesting.
I do think that's a good
and then it never happens.
To take into your own characters, right? If you want to play an evil character, you maybe don't want to start as the Joker, right? Like maybe that is your long-term aspiration, but maybe you should start as somebody that crosses the line from time to time.
This is a really good point that I want to tangent off of for a moment. I often see people be like, this is the character I want to play, but the version of the character they want to play is like the 20th level version, like the final form of their character. And I think when you want to make a character, you want to look at like, this is who I want to play, but let's roll back the time and let's start my character 10 years before they get to be that person. And I think that's a really good approach. We saw that with Krob, where he's like, I want to be the Godfather. I'm not starting. I'm like level 1 right now. I'm like helping out my cousin. And one day I'll be the Godfather. I think that's how characters should be built. It was with a goal.
The disconnect there is that you have a lot of people who sort of like gain their interest in playing games like Dungeons & Dragons have read like fantasy novels or things like that, right? Where starting off the novel, you have these really cool characters that get introduced. You have Landman Drogren, who shows up in like the first 60 pages, and he's this experienced like stoic warrior.
What was
and
that
you
name?
have like Landman Drogren.
Okay, continue.
Hey, man,
Landman Dragon Hands.
Names are great.
Oh my god.
Keep going.
I have a friend who calls these people Chad Thundercock.
Wow.
That's what he calls them.
Well, I think with Land, they focus more on the planes and angles of his face.
Oh, is that so? Well, I guess that's right.
But I think there's that disconnect where like Dungeons and Dragons starts you off with like a bunch of level 1 16-year-olds who are leaving the farm for the first time, and a lot of people are kind of drawn in because they were excited by these characters that started out cool, right? And like it's not that they're static, like these characters still go through growth arcs, but they're more highly competent at the get-go than your stock Dungeons and Dragons character. Because I think that's where a lot of the disconnect comes from.
I would agree, because a lot of fantasy novels, your characters don't start at first level. They start at like 6th level or 8th
like
level.
Even when they do, a lot of the supplementary characters don't start at first level. Like you'll have there's tons of fantasy novels where it's like you're the 14-year-old boy of prophecy and you need to go learn to be cool so that you can stop the evil guy.
There's way too many of these.
Yeah.
There really is too many of these. Well, I mean, I think inherently there's a disconnect in Dungeons and Dragons in itself as well, right? Because the whole idea is, hey, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons to be this big, strong hero with my large longsword, right? And you start with the stick and you're like, okay, which is why many people skip to 3rd level in 5th edition, which I think is a terrible idea. Just play the first levels. They are fun. But,
you
they're
start
like,
at first level. That's why it's called first level.
I want to start at 5th, or I want to start at 8th because that's cooler. That's more heroic, right? Like in Dungeons and Dragons, there's like inherently a conflict between starting at first level for a heroic fantasy, you know.
And I think that's what they're trying to fight more and more with Dungeons and Dragons, is to make first level characters less inept feeling over time. And
that's why they give you flying Aarakocra and planar travelers.
But if you want to make them less inept, like then they're not first level characters anymore. First level has to be the weakest
challenge that D&D is facing. Like if I were trying to make a game where people are strong at first level or like strong at the start, I would not play Dungeons and Dragons.
There's two types of kind of stories though, right? There's the story like Terran Wanderer, who you're the assistant pig keeper and you're thrust into adventure and you meet Prince Gwydion and you meet the Horned King and Archon and like you become a great hero over time. But then there's also Conan the Barbarian, and you begin the adventure as the biggest, baddest thing in the world, and you go through the entire story as Conan, right? Bopping the heads of whatever runs up against you and facing down the evil serpents and magic powers of this crazy world, right? And I think that both are kind of fair avenues of play, right? Like there's no reason why you couldn't have a very fun D&D campaign where you are all versions of Conan, right? And you are badasses and you face down all kinds of terrible things along the way. But, you know, if you want to be Terran Wanderer and be the assistant pig keeper that grows into a character, like that's fine too.
It just works better with different systems, I guess. I think 5e is inherently more heroic from the get-go. Yeah. And it's progression, right? So if you start out, you're gonna be like a greater hero than the person with the stick, like just from the very start, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Good chit chat.
Yeah, we did it, guys.
We did it. That's it.
That's it? Okay.
It's been 3 hours, surprisingly. Can't believe it's actually been 3 hours already.
Yeah, we don't usually go this long.
The first few chit chats were like 4 hours.
I thought we only did 2 ever.
We
did more than 2. I watched 2 and I came on board for the third one, so that's impossible.
We would do like 2 hours of catching up and stuff, and then I had like lists of topics to like go through. And like I did research and was like ready to bring mechanics and stuff, and so we would have like 2 hours of BS and then 2 hours of like Greg being upset that you guys didn't want to dig into the deep mechanics that I had like
sounds like tried
very hard to create and talk about.
Cool. Well, I guess we're going to pull this in for a landing. We've done all the things that we need to do. Thanks for hanging out, folks. I think...
Thanks for showing up. Thank God. I'm just teasing. I love these people, okay?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Thanks. Did we have something next week?
Yeah, when is our next session, my dude? Are we
playing next week?
Lag, right?
So we had said lag was going to be on the 23rd, 2 weeks from today, next.
Right.
And
because
then there
I
was...
remember that we couldn't schedule the 16th, and then like I kept the 23rd open.
Yes, that's right. I had lag on the 23rd.
I thought there had been some chat about doing something next week. A second chit chat? Do we need a second chit chat?
We could do a second chit chat. I'm open on Sundays for the most part.
I'm gonna put it out there that at some point we gotta go together, get together and have a real serious talk about our expectations for this 8 out of 10 seriousness campaign. And I know you don't like making plans, Neal.
No, that's not what I'm sighing deeply over.
I think that it sounds like Ryan has already confirmed he's rerolling a character. It sounds like Nick wants to reroll his character. It sounds like there might be a third, right? Maybe this is a chance for a hard reset on the campaign.
But
I think.
Is Nick rerolling? I didn't know that.
In the chat before this, he said, yeah, he was considering it.
I don't want to do a hard reset on the 22nd. Okay, I need some time to emotionally prepare for whatever's gonna happen afterwards. So I would really appreciate it if it wasn't on the 22nd. That's all I'm saying.
We're not going to do a
Putting
hard
it
reset
out.
on the 23rd. Promise. No hard resets right away. Let's just do a quick chat about the future of lag, because it does seem to have sort of lost its way a little bit.
Can we do that off stream?
Yeah, I think it'd
Totally.
be better to do that off.
Yeah, that's perfect.
not
Yeah,
live.
that's a brilliant idea. Cool.
Yeah.
This was Chit Chat. It was fun. We'll see you guys next week for another Chit Chat, maybe. Yes, it's
Maybe.
going on the
Cool.
calendar.
I mean,
Maybe
I'd
it'll
be
happen, maybe it
open,
won't.
So
Yeah.
let me know.
Yeah.
Chit Chat
Make some evil characters until then.
next
us know.
week.
Oh, and Friday as well. I believe Greg and I are going to be starting 6 Ages, Ride Like the Wind. So if
Friday
you,
is the 14th. Yes.
yes, yeah. So if you were a
Exciting.
fan of King of Dragon Pass, or you want to come and check
Which
out
you
what that's
should
all
be.
about,
Yeah, look at that
come take a look
Twitch.
at that. There is a
follow to
non-zero
this
chance I'll
wonderful
cancel
Twitch
because I'm
channel.
getting my second vaccination on Thursday, so that might just
Woo!
destroy me. But I don't think it
Exciting.
will. So I think we are going to play Friday.
All you guys would have been vaccinated by then, and I'm just dying alone. Oh my god.
My second is gonna be on the 30th,
I
and
don't
I'm
even get my
concerned
first
because
one
the
yet.
first one like killed me. Like
Well, guys, if I
I
don't
died.
make it, there's gonna be one spot open for Chit Chat and Future Lag. You know?
We'll just
Just
replace
put
you
it
with
out
Rob.
there.
It's the upgrade we've
All
been
right.
looking for.
Get on, Rob. Get
Yeah.
on.
yeah, I
You
mean
can do it.
Rob is an upgrade over me.
Better than me, and then that's even sadder. Oh my god, my day is ruined.
Chit Chat's just going to be Sean and Rob arguing about the rules of D&D and counter
You know
luring each
what?
other's. I would listen to that
watch
show.
That shit. I
would
would
watch
watch it.
Yeah,
I would pay good money
too.
for that.
As fellow players, I think I'll just agree with whatever Rob says, and then we'll have to make it canon.
Oh boy.
Oh, the Rob and Sean
Okay.
show. Also, I can't believe we got through 3 hours of chit chat with only barely touching on COVID and vaccinations. Well done
Oh,
for
did
not
it.
bringing it up until the very end,
I
everybody.
only vaguely criticize society
And
too.
not the
Like that's
Second World
a
War.
new high for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Pretty good.
We didn't bring up Nazis at all. This has
No,
been a
just-
great chit chat.
Just a little bit of justifiable murder, but otherwise we've done pretty well overall, I think.
I did have a Joseph Stalin conversation that I wanted to have when we were talking about good and evil, but we didn't get there. So,
Yep.
Cool.
Next time.
Next time.
Maybe it's better that's not on screen. So
I can help you out with that before we even get there. Joseph Stalin, evil. There we go. We
but did
it.
he think he was evil? We'll
Yes,
find out
no,
next
he
time
was,
on
he
Chit
was,
Chat.
he was a bastard. He was a bastard through and
But
through.
did he think he was evil?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Well, most people probably don't think
That's
they're
fine,
evil, but
that's
I'm going
fine.
to tell you that he was ideologically inconsistent even before he became a
didn't-
world leader.
We'll see you guys next time for more Chit Chat. Goodbye.
Bye.